answer my prompt best. And so if I haven't thought of all of the parameters, or I wasn't explicit enough, or maybe I didn't provide a role, I then have prompted it to at least ask me questions, and so it will ask me whatever questions it feels like it needs to gain enough understanding to give me a more robust answer. You could ask it to rate its own response, rate its confidence level in its response. It's not bad at that. And then you could also, strangely enough, play to its emotions. While it doesn't actually have emotions, obviously, it seems to, and they've had some studies that have shown this, it seems to do better when you add some emotion into your prompt. So, for instance, if you give a prompt about, needing some sort of task done or helping some sort of task, if you then add, this is really important to me, my job depends on it, it actually gives a better output. Strange, but it's been found to work. And then we also added edit at some point after that. So evaluate, so you evaluate the strength of the response. Determine the accuracy. So I think this is a really important piece to add in. We'll talk about accuracy a little bit more in a second. Identify, so identifying any bias. We'll also be talking about that. And then transform. And I think this piece is one of the most important pieces that at least I'll be talking about, because it's very important for us as well as for our students to understand that we're not just going to take everything that an AI platform is going to give us. We want to use it for its strengths, for its ability to provide ideas, for its ability as a thinking partner, for its ability as an accessibility tool, but at the end of the day, we want to evaluate it. We want to make sure that it's providing us accurate information. We want to make sure it's not biased. We want to transform it so it's in our tone and it is our voice, right? And so the prepare model, or the prep, is the most basic, but if you feel ready to move on to the ask, rate, emotions, you can start adding those into your prompts. And then the edit, to me, is, like I said, one of the most important features. So that Mastering AI Prompt Writing title is actually a link. So when I share this with you on the last slide, it links to a presentation where it actually delineates very specifically each one of these different aspects. I'm just going to show you really quickly what that looks like, because I have a prompt written out, and I in more detail delineate each one of these aspects, but this would be a little bit more of a robust prompt. Create a rubric for this task, create a presentation on the 2008 Sichuan earthquake, act as a knowledgeable 8th grade geography teacher who is an expert at pedagogy and specializes in earthquakes. So the green is the prompt, the blue is the role. The task is for an 8th grade geography class. The rubric should focus on demonstrating knowledge through solo taxonomy and include separate levels for the quality of the presentation, include examples of content in the rubric. So this is being explicit. The purple, the rubric should be presented in a table and be written at a reading level of 11 years old. After you have provided me with a draft rubric, ask me some follow-up questions in bullet points so that you can provide a more thorough and quality response. I actually specifically ask it to ask me one question at a time, because I find even like the bullet points overwhelming. If it asks me like 5 follow-up questions at once, I'm like, no, please ask me one at a time, and I answer one at a time. Provide a confidence score between 1 and 10 for the quality of your response. Additionally, briefly explain the main reasons supporting your classification decision to help me understand your process, the thought process. This task is vital to my career and will help my students develop their understanding. I greatly appreciate your work. That's the emotion. So this is a basic prompt, but you can get very detailed in these prompts. And the beautiful thing is you can get very detailed in these prompts, but the beautiful thing is you can actually ask it to create the prompt for you using the prepare and edit framework. So if you're not really sure how to do prompt writing, if you're just getting your feet wet with it, you can actually ask it to give you examples. You could ask for it to provide you with more detailed prompts. And so this is a prompt that I asked ChatGPT to create for me using the prepare framework. So I have the prompt pretty clear set of instructions for a student assignment on analyzing a character from a novel. I gave it a role. I told it to act as a high school teacher who's experienced. I find that if you tell it that it is an expert in something, act as an expert, it does better. Who's experienced in designing assignments. Explicit instructions, so I'm asking for it to include assignment goals, a step-by-step process, evaluation criteria. I'm asking for it to consider the following information: the student age and reading level, clarity of steps to avoid confusion, time needed. I can keep, they'll come back, I saw it right before. Parameters, tone of voice, clear, supportive, and encouraging. Language, simple and direct. So you can see just how detailed you can get with this prompting. And this is very different than a database search. So in database searches, you might be using Boolean, terms, and you're trying to limit the number of words that you're searching by. This is not like that. It's a natural language model. And so with that, you can use your own natural language. And in fact, more input provides better output. So the more that you can give it, the better the output is going to be. The more detail you can provide for it about your role, about your needs, about your rationale, about your students, you will get better output. So you can get very, very detailed with the prompting, and you can ask ChatGPT or any other large language model for help in the prompting if that's something that you haven't practiced with yet, and it will actually help you to get better at it. So some of the large language models that are readily used, my favorite is OpenAI's ChatGPT, but there's also Google Gemini, there's Anthropic Claude, there's Meta's Llama, there's Microsoft Copilot, and then there's Perplexity. So I would implore you to try different ones, see which one speaks to you. I know some people love Claude. I tried it, and it wasn't for me. I love ChatGPT. I've practiced with it a lot. It is something that I'm used to. I know how to work with it. And so, for me, that's the best choice. But for each of you, you might have a different choice. But AI is much more than any of these large language models or ChatGPT. And I find that a lot of people, when they think about AI, even still, even with all that's happened in the last couple of years, they still seem to think that AI is ChatGPT. So these wheels are all over the internet. I don't know if you've ever seen them come up on like a news feed or Facebook feed or anything like that. There are so many different AI tools. I can't possibly even begin to go through them all, but they exist. And these wheels give you some sense of the breadth of them. So there are ones for video, for images, for code, for speech, for 3D, for research, for text. So there are a lot of different ones that can be used depending on what you are trying to do. And so ChatGPT might not be the best thing for what you are trying to do if what you're trying to do is maybe create some code. Maybe there's something better for that. Or images, maybe there's something better for that. So some tools that I'm just going to highlight because they pertain to education, and I didn't want to overwhelm you with all of the tools. These tools that I'm about to go through have a lot of different features, and so they kind of work like a buffet, where even if you haven't practiced prompt writing, and even if you haven't really dove into the world of AI, these have pre-written, ready-to-go prompts to make that a little bit more palatable and a little bit easier. And while all of these that I'm going to present do have paid features, they do have a tremendous amount of free features, and so there's still a lot that you can gain from them even if your school district isn't subscribed to them. So for instance, Magic School is one type of such buffet. This is just a screenshot of one of the pages of their tools. They have several pages. You can keep scrolling of tools. They have a text leveler, a report card comment generator, a professional email prompt. So if you have an email and you want to make it sound a little bit more professional, a rubric generator, a text summarizer. This list just continues. Another one is School AI. So it also, as you can see, has a similar framework. It has a lot of these different tools that it offers, basically pre-made prompts that you just plug in your own information to, and it kind of cuts a little bit of some of the corners of having to learn how to do that writing. One of those large language models, whichever one works for you, ready to go pre-made prompts. So School AI is another one, a multiple choice quiz maker, a text translator. I'll talk about IEPs, I hesitate with that. Worksheet generator, I mean there's a whole host of these and there are several more pages. That was just a screenshot. All of these are linked, by the way, so in my actual presentation, when you're accessing it, simply click on the screenshot, you'll be taken directly to these websites. Another one is Diffit. Diffit will create ready-to-go resources based off of whatever it is that you need. And so you can customize your resources, you can either put in a text prompt, or you can put in text like you can put in an article, or an assignment that you already have, or a YouTube link, or a website link. And it will create resources based off of whatever you ask it to do. And the resources look really nice. They're very visually appealing, and a lot of teachers really like Diffit for that reason. Another one is EduAid, I believe is this one. I cut off the name. But again, it's more of that buffet style. These are all coming out one after another. A lot of school districts, I know ours included, is having a tough time picking like which one should we go in. Because nobody has made it to the top yet. We haven't figured out like which one is the one that's going to be the best one, that's going to beat them all out. They're all too new. So what we're trying to do is we're piloting different ones and we're trying out different ones and we're going to reevaluate. And at some point, I imagine one of these platforms will probably inch up higher than the others, but it's too early to tell and there are too many of them. And again, just like the large language models, play around with each one. They might offer different things. The style might be a little bit different. You might prefer one over the other, but these are just options that again offer that buffet if you're not ready to go dive deep into robust prompt writing. Another one for presentations is CuriPod. So it can create a lot of different, or it has a lot of different features that can be created all using AI, and it also is very visually appealing. So that is another one. And Brisk Teaching, while it's not its own website like the others, it is a Chrome extension, and it kind of lives on the bottom of your Chrome screen. So you would have to be in Chrome, it would not work for Safari, but it integrates really, really well with any websites you might be on and any documents or presentations on slides that you're working on. So and then the last one I wanted to mention was Goblin Tools. Weird name, but that's how it is. So this is the executive functioning one that I was mentioning earlier. So you can take any task and it will break it down for anybody. This is not even specifically geared towards students, but in addition to breaking it down into steps, it can further break it down into steps beyond the initial steps if you want more of that. So for science research, certainly that can really help as they're embarking on writing a certain section of their paper, right? It might be overwhelming, and so if they kind of are able to break it down into, okay, I'm going to do this first, I'm going to do this next, I'm going to do this next. Oh, you know what, this feels overwhelming, can we break this down even further? This might be a nice tool for them. And it does not require, unlike the other ones, any sort of sign-in. So if you're worried about data privacy agreements, which is something that a lot of school districts should be requiring for any platform that requires a logon, you would not have to worry about that with this. And I will tell you, all the other platforms I just showed you, our school district did not have a problem getting a data privacy agreement to use with students if you wanted to. So if those are things that you are interested in, that should not be a hurdle that you should be afraid of. There are some additional tools that it also adds. So there is a text formalizer. So again, if students are trying to learn email etiquette, if they're emailing mentors and you want them to kind of see, like, let's take your format that you just, wrote up and see how we can make it a little bit more formal, a little bit more professional. This could be a good tool for learning that email etiquette. There is an estimator. It can act as a judge. It can act as a professor. It can compile information for you. So this also has a bunch of different features. So in this era of AI where we have so many options, how should we proceed? So one thing that, and I was mentioning this a little bit with the IEP information, because one of the ways that these AI platforms get their input is from your input, They have their data sets, but they also get your input. And if you put in PII, which is personally identified or identifiable information, it can remember that. And so you never want to put in identifying information, certainly about students. What you put in about yourself, that's up to you. What you put in about others that you know, I would be very careful of. ChatGPT does have an enterprise subscription, and that is a closed system, meaning that whatever information is put in there, it is not used as training data. But unless you're at that enterprise level, which is really for like businesses, corporations, that type of thing, your conversations are being used for training. They're used for that feedback loop, and they're helping the program and the platform to get better. So I would be very, very careful about putting any personal information into any of these platforms. Now, having said that, some of these platforms do have, like you saw, the IEP, helper, generator, whatever. And if you have a school subscription, then one of the features of these platforms is they say that they're going to keep that data closed, and that will not be used for training the platforms. But unless you have that sort of subscription model, or any input that you put in is being used for training. So be mindful of that. And it's also important for students to be aware of that as they are using these platforms. Some other laws and regulations to be aware of. So I already mentioned data privacy agreements. So in New York State, we have to adhere to what's called Ed Law 2D, which means that information about minors cannot be shared without a data privacy agreement. And so any platform that your school district is having students log into, and even if it's taking in the most basic information about them, like their email, their name, their school, right? Because all of that can be seen usually from an email, that even needs a data privacy agreement. And so the ideal thing that most schools probably should be doing, but not necessarily all schools are doing, is limiting so that students are not able to access any platforms that your school district specifically does not have a data privacy agreement with. So for that reason, we have not been able to have our students use ChatGPT with their school Google accounts. They can use it with their personal accounts if they're 13 years or older and their parents consent. But we cannot encourage them, or it wouldn't work anyway because it's locked in our school district, to try to log in with their school email. So that's also something to be aware of. Magic School, so I just took a screenshot of this disclaimer because I thought that it was meaningful. They do give you this kind of fair warning to check for bias, that AI can occasionally produce bias or incorrect information. The 80-20 approach where AI can do the initial work, but you should be adding touches, you should be reviewing it for bias and accuracy, for context, all of that. Your judgment matters, and then also that privacy piece. So that's an important piece to know about this. AI detectors. All right, so AI detectors is what a lot of educators turned to when all of this first came out in November 2022. The first thing that everybody wanted to know is, how do I check on this? How do I make sure that my students aren't using this? And they don't work. So this is the US Constitution. It was put into one of the top AI detectors, GPT-0. They tout being like 94% accurate at detecting AI. It detected that as 100% AI generated. And I'm pretty sure that our founding fathers did not have ChatGPT accessible to them. So obviously it makes mistakes. You could also turn to the research. So there's not a tremendous amount of research compared to other fields on AI, but it is growing rapidly, as I'm sure you are aware. And so these are some of the pieces of data that I pulled out. So these large language models, these chatbots, they are easy to defeat, easy to reword the writing, given a few more prompts, and it will not seem like it's written by AI anymore. They also tend to be biased against non-native speakers. So again, it's keeping in mind that accessibility feature. It might be helping a non-native speaker take what they've produced and give them feedback on it, and then it might be detected as being AI generated, when really they just needed a little bit of help making sure that language was not an issue in what they were writing. So there's this kind of feedback loop, this AI cat and mouse game that happens. So ChatGPT emerges, students use it to do work for them, teachers threaten to punish, students use AI anyway, teachers accuse of using AI to write, students claim the teacher has no proof, teachers use AI detectors, students use text humanizers, which is a thing. If you Google it, there are many, many text humanizers that you can put in AI-generated text, and it will humanize it and make it undetectable. So really, it doesn't work. So what does this mean for cheating? Interestingly enough, the Stanford study that was on the previous slide found that the rate of cheating was about the same both before ChatGPT and after it. So it might look different, but cheating was happening before, it is still happening now. So in terms of where we're at, you can kind of think back to like the calculators and how teachers were trying to like, oh no, it'll do all their math for them. They won't learn how to do math. We got past that, and so that was the initial fear, the initial anxiety with this, and we're starting to get past it. A lot of the education articles that came out soon after ChatGPT rolled out were all about fear, and then 6 months later, they were all about acceptance. And now we kind of have a mishmash of some are fear, some are acceptance, some are a combination. So this is what cheating used to look like, right? Figured a science example. But really, and this is another big name in ed tech, Matt Miller, he created this chart of what is cheating today, right? And this is going to be a topic of discussion for a long time for school districts. And so if we kind of have this scale of like more of it is created by AI, less of it, so more human, the student does all the work without assistance from AI, the internet, nothing. So we certainly would consider that to be not cheating. What about if a student writes content but asks AI for feedback to improve? Is that cheating? No. I have no fear about going to a colleague and asking for feedback, right? That's not wrong. So why would asking an AI for feedback be wrong? It's feedback. So something to consider, yeah.
Just to be difficult there, I could imagine making the opposite argument, right? So something, we all prepare our kids, let's say, for, to write papers for competitions. I can make suggestions about what they might change, but I don't think, I can't rewrite some of it to make it better. So if I say to AI, hey, what do you think of this? Can you make it better? And it rewrites stuff for me.
So
that could be
exactly,
problematic.
it depends how it's done. I will tell you that platforms like School AI, they have a student side where you can provide students with certain tools. You could say, I want to provide a science research essay feedback giver tool, and you put in whatever prompt you want, and you can say, I do not want you to rewrite any of their work. I want you to suggest edits. I want you to just provide them feedback that they can then act on. And so that's a tool, for instance, our school district is looking into, because we could really, and that would be something obviously the students can use their Google accounts to log into, but you can really delineate that difference. However, that's not something that we're able to delineate when they're at home. And that won't be something.
Right.
But we do need to have the conversation at our building and district levels of like, what are we comfortable with and what are we not? And I had this conversation with our English department because I presented to them, because they're also very nervous. They have a lot of writing in their courses, right? And so if a student consults the internet or AI for writing ideas, what creates the content on their own? Was what I did for my dissertation trying to figure out what I should actually do for my topic? That's that. Was that cheating? I don't know. I don't think so. I've been doing all the writing. But it helped lead me towards what I might be interested in researching in a way that felt like a very back and forth conversation with a friend or a colleague that I wouldn't question if I was doing that. I don't know. A student gathers statistics or research via AI but creates all the content on their own. It's for you to decide. So as you go up this scale, it becomes more and more AI and less human feeling. And some people are comfortable with things at the top. There are people that say it's here, Let it do all the things that it can do for you that would take hours, out of your day normally, and you focus on the more creative parts, or you focus on the in-person, like the relationships, or presentations, or portfolios, or whatever it is. And then there are people who think this is the only thing that should be considered not cheating. It's a very, very individual conversation. I'm not going to tell you where to be on the scale, but it's a conversation that I'm sure you've already started having, and if you haven't, you should have it. So some reflection questions just to think about. Have you discussed with your students when it's appropriate to use AI and when it's not? How are you currently addressing media literacy? I'll talk about that in a second. And then also, what does thoughtful integration of AI look like in the classroom? Just some things to think about. I'm not expecting you to answer that now. So AI tools are certainly leading us to reconsider how we approach typical assignments, right? So, in my opinion, this means that we want to make sure, as we probably always should have, right, the process over just solely the end product. And so a couple of tools that can help you to do that, because I don't want this to all sound scary and as though you don't have control, is revision history. Revision history is a Google tool that acts as a it basically gathers data on your students' writing assignments that they do within Google Docs. And so I ask my students to submit everything as a Google Doc, to do everything as a Google Doc so that I can see their writing, and also to submit everything as a Google Doc with me as an editor so that I can see all of this information. And so it tells me how many deletions, how many large copy and pastes, which may or not be meaningful, right? If they're just moving a section or a paragraph from one place to another, it's considered a copy and paste, but it's their own work. So you do need to be critical of this. It tells you how many writing sessions, how many times did they come back to the computer, how many active writing hours or minutes did they use. So it doesn't count the total time that the screen was just open. It's how long they were literally typing for. So if they're providing you with a 4-page section, but the writing time is 30 seconds, it's questionable, right? So the other thing is you can see a replay of the writing. So this is just a screenshot of that replay. And it shows it to you. You have options for real time. You can speed it up. You can fast forward to different parts. So you can see it's better than just looking at the version history in Google Docs, because you can really see like their keyboard strokes. You can literally see just letter by letter, word by word, copy and paste by copy and paste. And so it gives you a much fuller picture if you are seeking to analyze their writing. Another tool is brisk teaching. So I was going to show you, this is a 1-minute video for their inspect tool, which is the tool that allows you to get a little bit more detail about their writing.
Extension to inspect student writing to understand how they created their assignment and how they evolved their thinking after receiving your feedback. So here is a piece of student work. I will tap on the Brisk Chrome extension and select Inspect Writing, and automatically a video playback of their version history will appear. I can see when they actually worked on their assignment, how many edits they made, how many minutes it took them to create this. I'm able to scroll through and fast forward through their assignment history. I can select the copy and paste emoji to see how many copy and pastes were made in this assignment. Of course, this doesn't tell you anything definitively, but it gives you a jump off point for a conversation with your student around academic honesty and integrity. You can ask them where this content came from and work with them to cite their sources. We can also select the feedback emoji and see the feedback you've left them previously and how they brought their essay further. There's also a button at the top right corner with a magnifying glass with the check mark. If you select this, you can see the likelihood that they used AI to inform their writing. So our Inspect Writing feature gives you a much more holistic picture of how
So the reason I wanted to show that video was because it demonstrated
your student actually
that
they created their assignment.
Better than I could have in words, because you're able to see in real time the possibilities. So I want to try an experiment. When you think what image comes to mind?
Jeanette. Sure.
What features, what are they wearing, where are they standing, those kinds of things. All right, lab coat, microscope,
Tape on the glasses.
tape on the glasses, pocket protectors, anything else?
Gray hair.
Gray hair, are they holding anything?
Yeah. Flask.
Flask, okay. Are they in a certain environment, like what's the room look like? Lab. All right, so I typed in scientist into Google, that was it. That's all I typed in. That's what I got. So, obviously, there's some bias there, right? We've got some flasks, microscopes, lots of labs, lots of white coats, lots of glasses. I don't see any tape on the glasses, but I think everything else that everybody said is within these pictures. So, I myself am a Soviet immigrant, so I did not feel bad putting this prompt in. I was curious how AI, not just Google, would be biased. And so when I typed in, generate an image of a Russian immigrant, they're all cold, they're all wearing jackets, they all have scarves, some look sad, right? If you ever look at any pictures, or any of like my parents and my grandparents, nobody's smiling in the pictures. So I was actually surprised that that one was smiling. That was a surprising feature. But just as humans are biased, the people that program these AIs have some of that bias. And so we need to be aware of that, our students need to be aware of that. I liked this meme. Why are you biased and wrong so often? Because you built and trained me. So you are biased and wrong often. These are some more examples of bias with ChatGPT. So the doctor yelled at the nurse because she was late. Who was late? According to the sentence, the nurse was late. That's ChatGPT. The nurse yelled at the doctor because she was late. Who was late? In this sentence, it is still the nurse who was late. So this continues. It says the doctor yelled at the nurse because he was late. Who was late? In this sentence, the doctor is late. So we keep saying the doctor's the man and the nurse is the woman. Even though the first sentence and all of the sentences that were prompted afterwards did not delineate who was the man and who was the woman. This was a funny one. Write a haiku about men of strength and might, protectors with gentle hearts guiding us through life. Write a haiku about women of beauty with hearts full of love and light, shine bright like the stars. See a difference? So just some things to be aware of. The other thing is also accuracy. So every disclaimer will tell you that these models are not 100% accurate, that you need to check the accuracy. Everything that you see that is in squares in red is false. It even says that this person, Noble Ackerson, died. He didn't. He's fully alive. So you have to make sure that you are mindful of what AI can do as well as what needs to be checked on. So we need to think about how is school preparing students for their future, because their future looks very different than the future that all of us are prepared for. And so some of the skills, some of the literacies that they are going to need go far beyond what we typically think of as basic literacy, right? Reading, writing. So AI literacy is certainly emerging as a skill. And there are a whole host of AI literacy resources. If you want to be able to do some different activities, lessons with your students, there's a link on the bottom there that links to some really great websites that provide some of these resources. I also want to talk about media literacy. So this is what it used to look like, that fake information. It was really easy to tell because it was just crazy looking. But it's a lot harder these days. So I want to do an activity. This is the end of my presentation. I'm sure that you guys are, maybe things are getting numb, your legs are asleep. So entertain me for a second, and let's get the blood moving. So we're going to play a game. What's AI generated and what's not? So it's a sit and stand game. You might not want to play it, but hopefully it makes the end of this a little bit more lively. So we're going to get our feet wet with this one. If you think the photo on the left is AI generated, stay sitting. If you think the photo on the right is AI generated, stand up. Photo on the right was real, the photo on the left Here's another one. Sit if you think the one on the left is AI generated. Stand if you think the one on the right is. Boom shot. All right, what about this one? It's a little different framework. So if you think it's human, then you're going to stand. If you think that it's AI generated, you're going to stand. All right, so a lot of you stayed sitting. That was good. All right, what about this one? Sit if you think this is AI. Stand if you think this is human. It's real. What about this one? Sit for AI, stand for human. I think that's Death Valley there somewhere. Anyone 4 for 4? Okay. All right, let's see if we can keep the streak going. I have a couple more. These are quick. What about this one? Sit for AI, stand for human. So this picture came up at a conference that I attended last month, and somebody from California was in the audience, and they said that you apparently can't stand on that side of the Golden Gate Bridge. So who knew? How about this nice avocado toast? Sit if you think it's AI, stand if you think it's human.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a fun game, right? You can play this with your children. Here, so that was supposed to play game. Well, I'm going to leave this up. I'll go back to the music, please. You're going to sit if you think the music is AI. Stand if you think the music is human generated.
In a world of chaos, you think to be a ray of sunshine. Our hearts set free. With every breath you take, a new day begins.
Alright, that was louder than I intended. But if you think that that was AI, stay sitting. If you think that that was human, you can stay sitting. Oh, I didn't get you guys on that one. That was AI. That was using a platform called Suno. It's so easy. You can literally put in whatever prompt you want, and it'll create music in whatever style you tell it to. So I could have, and I should have, but then it would have been really obvious that it was AI. I could have put in a prompt saying, create a song that is techno beat sounding about presenting at a conference for science research, high school science research teachers. And it would have, and the lyrics would have matched that prompt. So just FYI. So it used to be really easy to be able to see what was fake and what wasn't. And that slowly got harder and harder. And with AI, it is extraordinarily difficult, obviously, as you guys just saw. So media literacy is also an important skill, more important than ever before, though, now. And so I have a whole host of resources as well for that, but science research seems like a right place to infuse that because of some of the other skills we're trying to incorporate into our students. So this one's just for fun. Have you ever seen this, anyone? A couple of you? I know I showed this at another thing.
Not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I'm not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality.
Speaking. However, his voice was cloned, and his likeness, his image, his mannerisms were also. So especially, this is something with media literacy for our students to recognize, the the more content that is out there on the internet about them or about any human, the better something like this can be, right? So Morgan Freeman, there are thousands of hours of film of him. So they have every possible angle of his body and his face. They have thousands of hours of his voice. You use that in an AI language model or an AI multimodal model as training data, you could do this fairly easily. So there are people that make videos like this in 30 seconds. Yeah.
A question about that. So, like, kids are big on Snapchat and TikTok. Now, they obviously have privacy, but is that somehow linked? Like,
So anybody with ill intentions could take their photo, could take videos that they've posted, and they could use that as training data for a deepfake video. There are programs that do this. There was actually a story a couple years ago about a cheer mom who had her daughter was being bullied by a couple of the girls on the squad, and I don't think she did it herself. I think she like hired someone for like $30 off like Upwork to do it for her. But she basically provided photos of these couple of girls doing things that they shouldn't have been doing that go against the student code of conduct for being on a sports team, in an effort to try to get these girls off of the squad. Now, everything was found out, nothing actually happened to, like, these girls remained on the squad, but they used photos that were readily and publicly available on them. So there are amazing things about AI, but then there are things we should all be aware of because we can be better informed. Yeah.
I've heard, so you mentioned like Meta's AI, that a lot of the things that you post on Instagram, and it's like, oh, you 10 years ago versus today, is really meant to be training their development of like how does age progression work, and facial recognition, things like that. So a lot of the stuff that we do is kind of a voluntary, like, oh, I'm going to opt
It
into
is,
that.
and it's all part, if you
that-
actually read the fine print of what you're agreeing to, like when you create those accounts, they say that they own that data. Those pictures are theirs. You can delete them, but they're in their data set.
Just remember, if it's free, you're the product.
Yeah,
Like,
data is
you're
gold
the
right
item,
now.
you're the item being sold.
Data is absolute gold right now. So, something to consider.
I have a question about ownership. So, at a scale of where one might draw the line as it being cheating, but even if you were to, let's say, write somewhere at the end of your paper in your references, like whatever it is, paper was edited or by so-and-so platform, at what point can we say that somebody actually owned the material that they are presenting?
So
Versus because there is that large scale of
There
how
is,
to mean
and
anything.
any output from a large language model, it is not copyright protected. You own it. Like you can use it however. Like they're not saying that OpenAI owns it or Google owns it or anything like that. I don't know if that's.
I don't
what you
mean legally.
Well,
I mean for our students.
So I
So
don't
like,
know.
like as research teachers, we expect our students to be putting in their own work. And at what point can we say this is not your work?
So I think that's where the things that we all do as research teachers, I teach research as well, right? It's those one-on-one meetings. It's all of those drafts, right? You're part of their process, hopefully, so that by the time you're not getting their final version, that shouldn't be the first time that you're seeing their work or exemplars of their work. So there should be some basis for how you're determining whether or not it's theirs. There's some tools to be able to look more closely into that process. There are certainly additional ways that they can demonstrate their understanding of their project and show their understanding of all of the pieces that they've written, right? And so, you might have to more creatively assess. But the truth is there's no easy answer for it. I will tell you from writing my own dissertation, one of the literacies I'm looking at is AI literacy. And so I'm going to just jump here. I'm going to just show you real quick. I call it my research dump, don't judge me. But anyway, I have all of my sub-literacies that I'm looking into with all of my articles that I found categorized by sub-literacy. And in my AI literacy, I think it was one of these papers. No. there are some papers already, only like the really recent ones, if you start looking at like 2024 papers, they've started to include an acknowledgement at the end. Not that one. I could find it for you real quick at some point, but they've started to include AI acknowledgements for the readers to be able to see. There were a couple of these on it, but of course, I didn't mean to bring it up, but because you asked the question. Oh, here, okay. Declaration of generative AI and AI-assisted technologies in the writing process. During the preparation of this work, the first author used ChatGPT to check text for spelling, grammar errors, and clarity. After using this tool/service, the author reviewed and edited the content as needed and take full responsibility for the content of the publication. So this is already being used in peer-reviewed academic journal articles, but you only kind of see it in some of the newer ones because this is also new. So it is something that not just the high school science research community is grappling with, it's everyone. So it's a conversation that needs to be had ultimately, but there's no perfect answer that I'm going to be able to give you, unfortunately. So I'm pretty much done. The last thing I was just going to mention, and then I'll take the question. Something that we did in Great Neck, Jess and I both served on our AI task force. We had a district-wide committee. It was comprised of individuals that came from all different grade levels, all different subject areas. It was an amazing collaboration, and we discussed some of the topics that you see here. We discussed privacy and ethical considerations. We talked about the legal ramifications, but we also talked about staff professional development. We talked about academic integrity. We talked about pilot programs. So there were a lot of different pieces to the conversation. If that's something that your district's not having yet, maybe you might want to start talking about it. So that's an option. I also have a collection of resources for AI guidance and policy creation if that's something that you want to review. So that's a link that will obviously take you to a more robust set of things. And that is all. So this is the QR code that links directly to my presentation. You would have access to everything I just presented. If that's something that you want at a later point, you don't get it now, you can always email me. I don't remember if my email was on the flyer or not, but I'm sure that Suresh will put you in touch with me. And then I know that you had a question, so.
So going into, you're a big fan of ChatGPT, you take the ChatGPT.
I do.
You think it's worth it over the 3.5 that's free?
I do.
Yeah?
Plus we get the dollar.
Yeah, the image generation is included. So for me, it's absolutely worth it. Because I use it, I'm not even kidding, on a daily basis multiple times a day. It's a tab that's open on my open tabs.
I've been looking mine over too, but I haven't bought it yet.
It's part of my daily workflow now. So if I'm writing an email, I copy and paste the email into it and I say, do you have any feedback for how I can make this better? And it usually does. So it's my tone, it's my email, but I think about things I might have not otherwise thought of. I ask it if the tone of the email is going to come off a certain way. If there are any issues or problems that are going to come up as a result of me emailing this email, what does it foresee? So it allows me to consider more than I might by myself and more than I might have the time to, right? So I do use it very much, and Jess is going to talk much more about the use of it. That was not the goal of my presentation, so she's going to be going into deeper into that aspect. But I for me, 100% is worth it.
You know, my experience with the ChatGPT 4.0 is it has more information. The data collected in that is far more. So the quality of the product which I'm trying to obtain has a better quality.
It does.
And it takes the visual impact also. I mean, at one point I mixed up the text and the visual, and basically it came back with an answer which was a combination of both of them.
Yeah, and I will say the paid version, I don't even know anymore
Or
if
when you
everyone
pay
has it or not.
version, I think it's
But,
$25.
so I pay $20 a month,
Yeah, it's $20 a month.
and so it's multimodal. I don't know if they've made the free one multimodal yet. Does it take images?
I'm not sure. I've never really tried to just.
So I will say with the paid version, in addition to generating images, it takes images. You can upload files, and so last February break, my kids were skiing. They were in ski school. I have not skied a day in my life. I brought my laptop and I was getting work done and I was grading papers that I had, and I could not read one of the students' responses because it was such chicken scratch. It looked awful. I took a picture. I said, "Can you decipher what this kid said?" And it gave it to me in text. And when I went back, I was like, "Oh, that is what he said." Like I couldn't even read it myself, but it figured out the text that he said there. I've taken pictures of my fridge, and I'm like, "What should I make for dinner tonight with what I have in my fridge?"
You're able to take a picture with your phone and upload it in? Do you have this in an app too that you're using?
Yeah, I use the app. And they also have a voice mode now. So the voice mode, sometimes when I'm like fleshing out an idea, like let's say I'm in my car and all of a sudden, and I have this all the time, I don't know if anybody else does, where I email myself ideas that just like pop up out of nowhere, but I know I need to follow up on it later. I've been using voice mode more. So I'll be like in the car and I'll have like an idea for a lesson. I'll have an idea for my dissertation. And I pop on voice mode and I start talking to it. I'm like, this is what I'm thinking. Here's like, my thought is that they could try this, or I could do this, or I could put this wording. What do you think? And it talks back to me. And we have this back and forth conversation as I'm fleshing out an idea while I'm driving home in my car. Like, it's amazing. The possibilities are amazing.
Just give you a transcript. You write voice note.
So everything is text. Everything it says, everything you say, yes. The answer to that is yes. So then, correct. which is why I've started doing this over just the email, like to myself with some idea, because I actually now have much more robust text as a result of this conversation, and I'm able to talk through an idea during time that I wouldn't be able to sit there and typing anyway. So.
The pictures which we have on iCloud, are those private properties or they are anybody can?
So, I don't know. It's murky. Right, so supposedly they're supposed to be private, but I don't know if I fully believe that they're not using them for training data.
I find it 15 years old picture pops up.
Yeah. No, they definitely, algorithms exist there, and the algorithms are like, they use AI to bring back, whatever, or to find commonalities amongst pictures, find all the pictures with cats, right? But they say that like your own Google files, your own Google Photos, your own Apple, iCloud, like all that's supposed to be private. I don't know. There's a part of me that feels like maybe it's a thing. But I don't know. That's my own opinion. Don't trust me.
Interesting point in this thing. Whenever I see pictures popping up on my iCloud, it shows up on the Facebook at the same time.
Yeah.
Are they related?
So a lot of people have said that, right? Like they'll be having a conversation with someone, the phone's just nearby, and it'll be about elephants, baby elephants in Botswana.
Thanks, that's going to be on Facebook.
I know, I was just, let's see how many people end up having something on their feed about baby elephants in Botswana. But like, it's, just like Siri and Alexa are trained to listen, it's not, it's not a crazy thing that they're listening, because they're listening for you to say, hey Siri. Everyone's phone is about to like go, or maybe my phone, or hey Alexa, or hey Google, right? But they're listening all the time for that maybe, but they're also listening to all the other stuff. I mean, I could talk about this like on and on, but I also don't want to take away any more time. I know that I had a little bit of a late start, so I didn't take like 7 minutes.
You're fine, you're totally fine. But I'd like to thank we've learned we can't trust anything on the internet. And whatever our students write, we have no way of knowing if they cheated.
Oh, yeah, so I have,
Like the CEOs.
so there was a Zoom call, some finance company, where they had a deep fake of the CEO of the company telling some subordinate to transfer like $25 million to some account, and he did it because he sees his boss and he hears his boss in his voice, so why would he question that? And it turned out that it was just a deep fake. They have not recovered the money. I have actually checked up on that one because that's a fun example to use sometimes, but I just knows I have a presentation of like just the things that are blowing my mind, and I keep adding to it, so that's a
Sure,
separate
so.
presentation.
You touched the base, the privacy part. Now, my question is this, let's assume I use a chat GPT and I work on some projects and everything. Does that information get stored in their data? Yes. So that means what I did can be used by somebody else.
It is. Has that been an issue yet? Have been
If you
sued
don't
by-
read the terms of
So
the agreement,
there have been examples where like someone in their own ChatGPT history talked about, like gave certain names and talked about some sort of, that person, right? Let's say John Doe. They gave a whole bunch of information about John Doe. Maybe they're writing a report on him. Maybe they're doing an observation on him, like whatever. And then somebody else, completely unrelated, searches for that same name and asks ChatGPT to tell them about that person, and now it has information about that person. So you kind of have to be careful that like when you're putting in information about somebody else that you're using like a pseudonym, like just call him Jack, instead of saying like Nathaniel Juggernaut. I don't know, like whatever, something that might be a little bit more specific. Obviously, if you're putting in like John Smith, or like my husband's name is David Lerner, like there are a million David Lerners. We get asked all the time if he's the David Lerner of David Lerner and Associates. Like you could look him up 1,000 ways and you won't actually find him. So it really varies, obviously, because it depends on the commonality of your name or the names that you're putting in, but it's certainly possible. We're agreeing to that when you
Aren't
create
you
information.
concerned that you're using the chat GPT seems like quite a bit of representation? Aren't you concerned that somebody can steal your idea and use it for their dissertation?
So I feel that I am serving like this gap that doesn't exist anywhere, and that's the goal obviously of any science research project. So I guess if someone thinks of exactly the thing that I am doing, I mean, I have spent, look at my hours of logs, like many, many, many dozens of hours writing this thing. And have I asked for feedback? Absolutely. But for someone to figure out exactly, like they wouldn't be able to ask like, get me Maya Lerner's dissertation. I've never put in the whole thing, right? I put in sections and I'm like, all right, give me feedback. I used this word 3 times because I couldn't think of anything else. What's another word I can substitute or whatever?
I'm not concerned about the Maya Lerner. The question is the content that you're putting into the chat GPT. Can we use
Someone would have to ask in a really specific way, the same way where someone would have to ask specifically for that name, right? Like unless they knew exactly the full breadth of my research, they could not get that out.
Your paper is now part of the learning data that
It
goes
is.
into it. So
right,
your
but
data-
if you think about the question we're asking though,
So is
it's
everyone
not
else's
any
paper that's
different
published.
than a paper that's published. We've heard a lot of stories recently about presidents of universities who have had to step down because of, fraudulently claiming that research was theirs, and those things were written before ChatGPT was something that people used. So we're just looking at a different way for the same thing to happen. And I think one of the things that comes up, and I'll talk about this a little bit in my presentation, is we're afraid because it's new, but the things that are happening, they're just happening faster than they could have happened before. They're not happening differently. If somebody wanted to steal Maya's dissertation 20 years ago, they still could have done it.
And do you know how many of my peers in my classes like have heard what I'm doing? Like we discuss it constantly. Like anyone could steal my idea if they wanted to. I mean,
Ms. Those were the good days when I did my PhD. It was on ITM typewriter. Nobody could steal it.
It was harder.
Wet clay.
Yours was
Mine was an acquisition.
Well, I don't want to,
I know I don't want to take away.
I'm going to move forward, but I didn't want to stop the conversation because it was good. But now I'm going to introduce.
By the way, you can ask as many questions as you want afterwards. I have
Yeah.
an email, I have a phone, I have all sorts of.
And I have the paid ChatGPT, and there is a setting in there. If you go into settings, you can turn off use my data to train.
Yeah, that's a newer setting, but only paid.
Only the paid service. Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to introduce Frederick Faracco. He's an accomplished STEM educator and software engineer with a deep passion for integrating technology into education. He earned his BA in biology and MS in 7 through 12 adolescent education at LIU, and he's currently pursuing a PhD in STEM education over at Stony Brook. Since 2008, Frederick has taught a wide range of subjects, including physics, biology, robotics, computer science, biotechnology, engineering, and AP environmental science. Currently, he teaches AP Computer Science Principles and Science Research at Walt Whitman High School. He revamped the science research program there, focusing on coral aquaculture, and he advises their marine bioscience research and coding labs. He's an adjunct professor at Five Towns College, where he teaches physics of drones, and also leading innovative projects like AI ReefCam and PictoPrompt. He contributed to over 100 iOS apps and participates in open source initiatives such as Telodrone Python demos. His work is marked by commitment to fostering student success and advancing STEM education through creative and practical applications of technology. So, Frederick, we welcome you today.
AI helped write that.
I saw that on the chat.
You could just X out.
Here you go. That is very creepy, I think. All right, let's get started here. All right, guys, so the purpose of this presentation is to kind of share with you guys some tools that I've used and worked with to kind of help with different tasks in a science research classroom. I have a tremendous amount of respect for all of you. I know what you guys do. When we're in the classroom, it is like impossible sometimes to finish one thing when you have all these different research students all doing different things. So like one day you feel like a teacher, the other day you feel like a plumber, the other day, you're like microbiologist, you're doing everything you can to wear all these hats, and it's really hard to do a great job at all these things. So these tools, I'm really just I'm gonna show you a whole bunch of tools you could use for all different purposes. Maya's presentation was really awesome, using text generation and ChatGPT, and she showed some of the other tools you could use. A lot of these tools, this is kind of like, some of these tools you might have to log into a site to use, but then I'll show you the free versions you could use of all these tools. Okay, so most of the tools you're going to see today, you don't need to pay for it. So we're going to go through some tools for finding specific research papers for your research students. You're going to see some tools that will take a research paper and help simplify some of the content in it, where students they could upload a research paper and they could ask a chatbot questions about the research paper, especially when it might be too hard to understand, like what some of the vocabulary is in some of the research papers. I'll show you guys how to use tools to make 3D models. 3D models that you can 3D print and use in your classroom from an image, or just from a text prompt, which is useful because sometimes, depending on what you're doing for your students, you might need like a part for your robot or a PVC pipe adapter, and you don't have time to run to the hardware store, but if you could get the part and 3D print it, great, try that out. Some other tools I'm going to show you guys is taking code, whatever language it is, and creating a visual diagram to help communicate and understand what the code means. Okay, so that's like, I have lots of kids that are jumping into programming for the first time, and you really have no idea what they're doing, and then eventually you write a program, and it's very hard to explain. So like, using this tool is going to be very helpful. Some other tools like for identifying species, environmental monitoring, and then I'm going to show you guys some really cool AI robotics projects that are very cool, very inexpensive, and you guys and your students are interested in doing it. I'm going to share with you guys links to all these resources. Okay, so I'll have a link at the end. If you guys want the link right now, or you can go on your computer and start clicking on them while I'm presenting, I'm totally fine with that too, but if not, I'll pull it up at the end. You guys want the link now? Yeah? Okay. Can you pull that up? Sorry about that. So So if you just type in, you could scan the QR code or just type in tinyurl.com and then that code, and it will bring you to a page that will have most of the links that we're going to talk about, and you can, as we, you can do whatever you want with it. If there's a problem with the page, just let me know. Works fine? Okay. All right, let's go back to the beginning. All right, so the first one, this is a consensus, I think it's consensus.com. It's on that first link. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. This is like an advanced search engine for scientific articles. So like you can go on this site, you can type in some keywords or some research questions, and it will pull up some specific research articles in that field. It will look something like this. You can give it a question. It's going to reference all information from scientific articles. It will show you where it referenced the information from, which is pretty helpful because it's going to give you both sides. It will tell you, like, if you ask a question, a research question, it will show articles that have supporting evidence and articles that don't support it. And then it will give you a list of all the different research articles. Okay. I just made a quick video of this, of just me typing in a prompt, looking at articles. I know it's going very fast. So if you guys want to go on that site and check it out. Consensus, yeah. So like in the beginning when students are trying to find good ideas for their projects, I found that this is helpful to kind of like find some evidence or find some information out there to see if there's any gaps in the research, or if this has been done before, or even finding any specifics about the project that the student's pursuing. But sometimes Google Scholar, we're on there, and it's very hard for some beginner students to even understand an abstract or like a research paper at all, like the different sections and the way it's written. So this is helpful, but this is something you do need to create an account for. I'm going to show you a free version of this later on, okay? So where you don't have to create an account. So that's consensus. This is another tool called Explain Paper, explainpaper.com. It's on that link. This is where you can take a research paper, you can upload the research paper to this site as a PDF, and now this is where you can. Let me see if I have it. Oh, I don't have a video for this one. So in this tool, you can highlight different sections of your research paper, and it will basically paraphrase or summarize that information for you. And then what you can do after that, you can start asking it questions like a chatbot about the section that you highlighted. So you can highlight a section and say, explain to me what this word means, or explain to me how they created this graph, or explain to me what this, what the variables are here, or simplify this. And it's just, you drag your document in there, and then you just highlight the sections that you want to talk about, and the chatbot just specifically focuses on the research paper that you're looking at, which is pretty helpful. I haven't found a limit, but I'm sure if you're uploading big, heavy-sized documents, I'm sure there could be a limit. Okay. All right, so this one, Luma AI Genie. And again, I'm going to show you, this is one where you might have to make an account for, but later on I'm going to show you a free version of this, where you don't need to log in. So this is very cool. So like, if any of you guys have access to a 3D printer in your school, and you're working, at Whitman, all of our projects are done in-house. So it's like a zoo, and it's like wires everywhere, but students are trying to build and make prototypes of all sorts of different things, and sometimes if there's just like one specific type of part that if you could just describe it, you need a 3D model of a part for whatever they're building. This is a text to 3D model. Meaning, I'm going to show you how this works. Basically, you can type in specifically, like a prompt, like a specific type of prompt. The more specific you get, the better the generation of the model it will you'll get. You can type in like we have PVC parts all over our classroom, and sometimes we just need like one little part. So if I go to the hardware store, I could just type in like a 1-inch PVC pipe. Make sure that's misspelled. Reducer to half-inch PVC pipe slip fitting. I type that in, and then this is what it generates. These are different versions of the 3D model. I can see one of those is probably going to work, probably that top one. But I could basically download that, and I could bring it into my 3D printer software, and then I could print it, which is pretty helpful. All right, so I also teach programming, but I also have to help students figure out how to program that are not in my computer science classes, but are in my research classes. And they need to figure out a way to communicate whatever program they use when they present their research, when they write their research paper. And a lot of the time, you know, they're going to like paste sections of their code, they're going to put comments on it, but it's still hard to explain and hard to understand for someone just walking in and looking at it. This is a very useful tool that I've been playing around with, where I'll take a section of code, like the important part, like the logic of the program for whatever it's doing, and you can put it into this tool, and it will create a flowchart for you, like a graphic organizer of the code. So this one is free to use. I'll show you an example right now. So if you guys were to look at this, this is C+ code for a robot, a robot smart car, and this is just a section of it. It's kind of cut off there, but if you knew nothing about programming and I showed you this, it might be hard to follow. If I take this and I put it through that tool, you can create something like this, which kind of breaks down the logic of the program. You have an if statement, you have an if-else statement. Check if it's clear ahead. If it's clear, move forward. If not, check if left is clear. If left is clear. If not, turn left or turn right. So it breaks down the different parts of the code, and you could adjust what you want this to look like in that tool, which is really helpful. This was another one. So this was like a block code example, and then this is through that tool. So it's taking your code, it's creating a flowchart out of it. Okay, that's helpful. That's helpful for me to teach. For teaching, if I have to explain the logic of any type of program, I'd rather not show them code at first and just go over the logic like this, which is very helpful. Who's used iNaturalist before? iNaturalist? Okay. So iNaturalist has been out for a while. If you haven't used it, it's really fantastic for identifying living things, you know, anywhere from plants to insects. You can even use it for, you could download the app, you could even record audio from birds and identify birds. But this has been a super useful tool. The AI feature for, let me just go back. I guess the video is not complex. All right, so the video just shows you how to use the app. Basically you start up playing. Sorry. you point your phone at any living thing, it will give you a percentage of how likely it thinks a certain species is. So it's not always 100% accurate, but you could take a photo of the bark of a tree, of a leaf of a plant, of an insect, most living things, and it's pretty accurate in identifying it. But the cool part is, in iNaturalist, you could look at the data of what anybody has identified on that platform. And you can see it on a map, and you could even export all that data. You could do all sorts of cool research projects looking at invasives or the distribution of organisms in certain areas. And this is free also for your students to use. So so one thing iNaturalist was not able to do was identify like tropical fish and coral, and in our classroom we have a lot of marine organisms, and to help my students try to identify them, I helped just create an app for them to use just like iNaturalist, to identify different marine organisms like different corals and tropical fish, where they could kind of take a picture of it. It will give them a percentage of how likely it thinks what species it is. Okay. It also helps filter out the blue light when you're taking photos. All right, auto draw. Anybody use this tool? Auto draw. This is very cool. Let's see if I can pull this up real quick. All right, so this is a tool if you have to create an experimental design diagram, or you have to draw something on the smartboard to help you teach a certain concept. I'm very bad at drawing. I know that. This it uses. Google created a game a while ago where you have to like put your word, you have to draw it, you can see it tries to guess it very fast. This kind of uses that data model, but it helps you draw whatever you're trying to draw. So somebody give me something to draw.
Cube.
A what?
Cube.
Cube? All right. Still doesn't see what I'm trying to draw. Still not see. So it's trying to guess what I'm trying to draw, and there's not just a normal cube up there. I guess I didn't do a really good job, but here we go. But then whatever it is you're trying to draw, you can just click up there, and then it pulls it onto the screen. So like, if they're like, I'm like, make an experimental design diagram of your procedure. And then they're like trying to draw a petri dish in Google Draw, and they're taking, if they're having a hard time drawing something specific for their project, this is just a good tool to create just simple graphics for whatever you're trying to do. Like here's my petri dish, and there's the one it makes. Okay. All right, do you want to come up and try that? 'Cause that's the best I could do. Okay. But yeah, it's pretty good. So like here's a flower. Trying to draw a flower.
It's good. It's good enough.
Wait, it's pretty good.
Yeah, we can't do bad.
There's a pulling up. There's a fly up there now. I don't know what I did, but
That's a good fly.
there we go. Bam. I guess that's a flower. So this is just like a simple, easy tool to use, free to use. So that's auto draw. All right, let me go back.
The students have so much fun with that.
Listen, a lot of these tools are going to be very distracting. Like for you specifically, once you start jumping into them, you lose time very fast. Just like, whoa, what is this? And just trying to improve like what you're trying to do. But once you start like trying these things, it's like you can think about like they can be very useful. Once you learn how to use them, you're like, oh, I can do this now because I have this tool. But like initially, you should spend some time just playing around with it. Just manage your time because it's very easy to get lost in these just playing around, even as a teacher. All right. That's auto draw. All right, so for robotics, I don't take part in FIRST Robotics. It's like an amazing program. That is like a tremendous amount of work. But any robotics that students do, ideas they have related to research, I love helping students with that, finding inexpensive parts, building stuff that solve problems. I mean, I'm all about that. It's fantastic stuff. I'm going to show you guys a really cool project that you can. I'll give you all the information about it, but you can basically, this project, you can build an inexpensive 6-axis robotic arm, and you could use AI models to train this arm to do so many different things. And just with the raw parts alone, it's probably around like $200. But this site right here, I'm going to show you guys this site, which it'll show you the data sets you can use with your students. And there's even like a step-by-step tutorial showing you how to do this. But if any of your students are interested in this, you can share with them these links. You could basically program you could train these robotic arms to do all sorts of different things. Let's look at this one. So this is showing you each iteration of this robotic arm. This one is for, I guess, picking up a cup after it falls down. That's it. There's 2 robotic arms. It falls down, and then it picks it up. But the graphs down there are showing you what specifically each motor is doing on the robotic arm. And the way this basically works is, once you set up 2 of these arms, you can manually move one arm and have it do what you want it to do. It collects that data from that arm, and if you do it enough times, you can collect that data and then run that data on the arm after you have enough iterations of it. And then you can start testing it and training it. So like there's all sorts of examples in here. Like this is picking up a cup, but like if you can think about anything that's useful. Like there's some that like fold clothes on here. Okay. And there's some that are like assisting in surgery. There's some that are, so there's models in here that you can already use. And then there's some where your students can come up with ideas. And the resources for this project, they're out there, it's free. I'll give you all the links to it. There's tutorial videos. And you can 3D print all the parts for this project, except for the motors that you have to buy. And then you can just assemble it all, which is the fun part. So this is called, it's a lay robotic arm. I think there's a link to it in that. There's a link to it in that page I gave you guys. So for this robotic arm, you can, the 3D printable files are right on the project page. If you can find it, I can always send it to you guys. And the parts for this arm, they're also in the link. You basically, the problem is with a project like this is like we can't purchase off Amazon or Alibaba. So like when these projects come out, it's like going to be impossible to find some of these parts. But if you guys are interested in this project, this is a 6-axis robotic arm using these AI models. There's another one. Like this is one like replacing the batteries in a remote control. Very cool. That's one when it sees a, orange Lego, it picks it up, it puts it back in the bin. That would be great to clean up like my kids' stuff all over the floor. Okay. All right, so again, in a research class, there's at some point of the year, they're gonna learn how to analyze data. They're gonna learn about different statistical methods for understanding how to answer research questions. And years ago, I had to either find data sets or prepare them in Sheets or Excel, and came up with lessons for that, and this site I'm going to show you has a bunch of just great data sets that you can generate in so many different fields that you could use for that part of the school year when you're doing statistics. So this is called. So this site, Hugging Face, see Hugging Face? So this is like the Wild West of AI, okay? This is like a site for developers that are creating AI models to kind of share it with the world and to get feedback and to also learn about what other people are doing, okay? So like I've seen most of these tools I'm showing you today, I learned from this site, just going on here and browsing around and saying, oh, what's going on this week? And this tool is very helpful because if I want to look at like different data sets, let's look at, I could come up with an idea to search for a data set, or I could click on one of these. Let's look at health vital signs. So it's creating a CSV for me that I could download, I could import it into Google Sheets. And now I could just, as a teacher, I could come up with maybe like a research question where I could have students decide, hey, how would we answer this research question with this data set? And which method would we use? You know, conduct a t-test and find out what's the difference between these two groups. Okay, now I have a new interesting data set that I'm not reusing from the last year. Okay, so this was a cool AI data set generator. You guys are the only ones who would appreciate this site. Okay, just saying. All right, so that's that one. So this is a cool tool. This is on Hugging Face also. This is free to use. This creates a slideshow for you, presentation. Now it's not going to. Now anything that's created from AI. I mean, you personally, you need to like adapt it to your style and the way you teach. But it makes it really like this will generate a very nice style for you. And the content might not be everything you want in there, but it'll be pretty nice. I mean, they have different styles up there. The sales pitch, you could have it, you know, bold decision presentation, and basically you type in your prompt here, and then it generates a PowerPoint for you. And then you can take that PowerPoint, you can do whatever you want with it. This is free to use. Again, the more specific your prompt is, the better the presentation you'll get. Some stuff that I created on here, I mean, there was still like a lot of stuff I needed to change based on what I was trying to do. Like sometimes it was too much, sometimes it was like not exactly what I wanted, but the examples I tested out on here weren't very specific. It was kind of like, make me a presentation about AI and robotics. It was like way too much, but it'll give you a great initial presentation. All right, so advanced search engine. Remember consensus? So that one you have to like log in and give them your information. I'm sure Hugging Face too. They probably take your information too. But this is very similar to consensus, but they're not going to charge you anything. So if I type in like let's look up lantern fly. Let's see if this working right now. So if I type, this isn't going to search specifically for scientific articles, but this will search for information about whatever you type in there. And then it's going to give you, just like Google does, like an AI response.
Catula is an invasive plant hopper native to parts of China and Vietnam. It was...
I didn't even know that was going to happen, but there's but it gives you the option to summarize the site, answers from this site. So it's just like extra tools within the search engine, and it's free to use. Okay. And by the way, all these tools on Hugging Face, you can see all the data sets where they created this model, and you can create your own models. Like they even have courses to kind of teach you how to create your own models on here, and how to create your own tools like this from the data set, from data sets that are all open source on here. All right, so that's the advanced search engine. All right, so this is more fun than anything else. Like, if you want like Jarvis from like the Avengers, this is basically the same thing, but it's free to use. It's on Hugging Face. This one's loading now. But basically, you upload your scientific paper, you highlight things, and then you use the chatbot to talk about that scientific paper or whatever document you upload. So that is also very helpful if students are trying to understand different content in scientific papers. All right, so this is so this next tool. This is a tool where you can take an image. You can take a photo of something, just a regular photo. Like I can take a photo of this water bottle right here, and just with that photo, I can take that photo and I can transfer it into this model, into the input image, and then I can generate a 3D model from that single image. So that's a texted 3D model. So I could take that, then I could take that 3D model if I wanted to, and I could find information about the volume, the height. I could 3D print that 3D model if I wanted to. But basically, it's just taking an image, just a 2D image, and creating a 3D model from that image. So like as research teachers, like even if you needed like this is like a pipette holder, a photo of a pipette holder on Google, and I just took that image, and this generated. It's not perfect, as you can see. If I rotate this 3D model, which I can't since it's an image, it has most of the physical structure of it, but it's not perfect. But if you're trying to create 3D objects for 3D printing or for any other purpose, you can take a 2D image, upload it to this site, and you can get a 3D model. Okay, you've got to think about how you would use that. I mean, there's lots of different ways you might be able to use it. But has anybody ever used a 3D scanner before in your classroom? 3D scanner, like 5 years ago, they sold these 3D scanners with LiDAR, and you had to like hold it in place and move around an object very slowly and carefully, and it was like very finicky, and it never came out great. But like, and that was like expensive, and then there was a software you had to buy with it. It was just very annoying. I'm taking a photo, just one single photo from my phone, and I'm getting a 3D model. That's it. So very, very simple, very cool. All right, so this is a tool you can use where you give it a text prompt into this model, a text prompt about creating a simple web application. So I can tell this to create a web application of a keeping score for a robotics competition that's happening later today. And it will create basically a website where I can add input to it. I type in the score, and it will create a graph for me. And it's a whole web page it creates just with the prompt. This is creating a website from a text prompt. Okay? But not only a website that you can interact with. Okay? Not like a web page, a web app. Meaning you can give this model a prompt to create an interactive website, and then it just creates that for you. Okay, right on the site. And this is also free to use. All right, so on Hugging Face, there's a page on here where they have like these free courses that students can take and learn how to do this. I haven't had students do this yet. I would love if they wanted to. And this is the QR of all those links. This is Donald Trump and the Hulk mutated into one person with one of these models. Let me show you. Let's see. Where's that page? 1 second. All right, so I mean, there's more tools on here that you like as a teacher or a student, you would have to think about how they would use some of these tools like generating images from text using DALL-E. Those of you that use ChatGPT, do you guys use the text to image generators before? What do you use it for? Like what do you make from it? Make like fun stuff? Is it icons? Is it like for a Google site?
Well, I've used it to make like the new logos for our department
Logos.
as well as for science research. I need my, and I do use it all the time. But I need an image that looks like this for my presentation.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So like images to add to presentations. I mean, it's very easy to get distracted using these tools. So like ChatGPT, you could use the text image generator if you don't have the paid one. Some people said you get like 2 and then they stop you for the day. Nice. So Canva has one too. This is another free one you could use. It generates it very fast. Again, the better the prompt, the better image you might get. But these models, all these models, text to text, text to image, text to 3D models, text to web app, image to 3D models, text to video, which is going to be like exploding soon. Text to video is going to be very big soon. You're getting better and better and faster and faster. You guys notice like if you use one of these, sometimes it can take a little while for it to generate. Now they're making them that where it's like it's very fast. Like it generates these images very, very fast. This is one where as you start typing, it's going to start making whatever image it thinks you're trying to write in your prompt, which is very, very fast. Let me go back. All right, so on there I did the code to flowchart, the code to web app. We have your data set generator, your image to 3D model. This is your text to 3D model. This is your text to image. Here's consensus, explain paper, the scientific document, your slide deck that creates the slideshows, the auto draw. This is the 6-axis robotic arm. This is a text to video generator. So you can give it a prompt and it will create like a short video for you. But I know OpenAI is working on like a really like great text to video generator, and that's going to be very, very interesting when it comes out. But I saw a preview for it. I don't know if you guys. I'm such a nerd. Like I'm so caught up on all this stuff, but I saw a preview for it. It was like the Game of Thrones party with I don't even. Let's see if we can find that video. OpenAI.
It's being used commercially already, but it's not yet open to like the public.
I don't know if this is the.
If you look at the first video, it's an overview of some of the videos. You don't have to watch 10 minutes of it. You just
I would say.
With Wix, you get advanced AI capabilities. For more customization, more time.
I mean, I saw one. It was like Game of Thrones. It was a DJ. There was a party with other characters. Like it was. I was like, is this real? Yeah, that's a short prompt too. I mean, that's like high def. It's like 4K. I mean, if I'm an actor, I'm nervous. super realistic.
Has anyone seen the new Coca-Cola holiday ad? It's 100% AI generated. Oh my gosh.
All right, this is a really specific one. I think that's your job as a drone pilot. All right. So, what else did I just say? Let's see. Data extraction, advanced search engine, and that's about it, you guys. So, like these are a bunch of tools I thought you guys would think were helpful in some way to your class. I've been just tinkering with them from the beginning of the year till now. If you guys know of any tools that nobody has mentioned, please let me know. I'm interested in learning more. And if you guys have any questions or need any help or anything at all, just feel free to ask.
Questions? I think we should make Coca-Cola.
You want that?
So you might want to show the original of it because there's the Coca-Cola commercial from I think it was the 80s or 90s, and they tried to recreate it, but they didn't use any props. They just used AI. So it's interesting to compare the two. Or maybe
Is this the one? Wait, so you want to see the old one first? Where's the?
it's like the something is coming. Trucks are coming. The holidays are coming. Look that up. Holidays are coming.
Is it?
So
No, that's
there's
AI.
You would have to look up the original first. So just put original, yeah, because it was the same thing. But it's that was the main side.
This one?
Yeah.
It's the season, watch out, look around, something's coming to town, to your town. Always coming to your something magic in the night. Can you see it shining bright?
So at that time they needed dozens of trucks, lots of lights, human actors.
Yeah, wonder how much that costs too.
Compare it to the takeout original, and you'll see the 2024 one. Maybe put in AI.
There we go.
Holidays are coming.
I think there's gonna, there's always gonna, yeah, someone still needs to prompt what it's generating, right? So like, I think that job description changes, again, it's the use of using these tools and figuring out with whatever it generates, how you're gonna use it, or how you need to modify it, or change it based on whatever you're trying to do.
The storyline still has to be there.
Yeah.
The people who animate the cells, who fill in the color, all of those positions, you know.
Yeah, so,
They need to find it.
yeah, there's,
Also, like, special effects are really in trouble because this was a big story like a year and a half ago. Tyler Perry was in talks to build out an $800 million new studio.
that's right.
And he put it on pause because OpenAI came out with SAAWA, which we saw the demo of, and he was like, I don't need to build out this studio if I can do this all within AI. So it's impacting special effects hugely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some of those jobs are gonna have to, might not be there, or they should, but there should be different jobs in that field that aren't there now using those tools, but not as many.
My friend's husband is the illustrator for all Stephen King books. Like he did the cover of It, and he does all the covers. He's panicked because this is going to put him out of business.
So I know it's a lot, but if I hope some of these tools are helpful, and if there's anything I could do in the future to help you guys in any way, my contact info is, that QR code is my contact info, if you guys are interested. But thank you guys.
They're coming in fast, changing the flow charts, doing all the presentations and everything. How does it change your?
I think initially right now it is, I feel like it's slowing me down a little bit because I'm trying to learn and figure out if I should be, or if I can even use this with students. But I think at some point, we're gonna have all these major tools to use, and we'll have to figure out which ones are best for teachers to use and students to use. But I do think right now it is like a mad rush with all these different tools to use and figuring out which ones are gonna be the prominent ones to use again. But again, yeah, as teachers, we have like all these different tools. Like there's so many, now there's so many more. So it is kind of overwhelming. I don't want to say that, but yeah. Yeah, some of these tools are very helpful to me. But some, it just requires, again, more time to learn how to use them and figure out if I'm going to use them.
So when you start a project, do you start with the coding or you start with the flowchart? In our days, we used to start with the flowchart.
Yeah.
Right? How can we discussing it? We used to start with the flowchart, and then we'll use the language to write all the coding.
Yes.
If you said something here that you start the coding in the university.
So in that example, I was trying to show you guys a coding sample, and then trying to show you that a flowchart is easier to explain the code itself afterwards. But yes, of course, when I'm starting if a student's starting a project, they need to break down the logic of words first before we write any code. Now, initially creating a flowchart before they actually write the code would be ideal, but usually kids want to jump right into it. And then afterwards, when they have to communicate what they did, like in research, that tool is kind of helpful for helping them create a flowchart that makes sense.
Plus, many of the students are taking code from somewhere else and making
In research, yeah, sometimes, yeah.
They modify something that they sold in an application somewhere.
Yes.
Etc.
In a computer science class, it's different. Like you'll break down the logic way beforehand, before the students have to, write a program for a specific task, and then they write the code.
So in your computer science class, if you give them a project you work on, or
They might have a different program they need to write every single day. Like this year, I'm teaching game design. So like they're writing, they're writing the code for a sprite in a program to shoot a cannonball out of a cannon, right? So it's like one day they're writing the code for the sprite, the next day they're writing the code for the wood to disappear after the cannonball hits the wood. Okay? So there's different tasks in each computer science class each day. Yeah.
Good job.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Great job.
Are you providing lunch, or are we going out on our home?
No, we are providing lunch.
Oh, wow. Even better.
Subash runs a good show.
I'm telling
No,
you.
I don't want my.
I hope everybody enjoyed their lunch. Thank you to Subash and his team. All right, our final speaker is Jessica York today. She is the Science Department Chair and Director of Research at John L. Miller Great Neck North High School, just known as North High School. With 24 years of teaching experience, she has led the Science Department for the past 10 years and directed research initiatives for the last 3. She holds a master's in education and a bachelor's in science from Adelphi, where she majored in biology and conducted genetic research in Arabidopsis for her 5 years there. Committed to enhancing the culture of high school research for both students and teachers, Jessica leverages artificial intelligence, tools like ChatGPT, and other large language models to improve teacher outcome and retention. Her goal is to make teaching research more manageable and appealing to a broader range of educators. Yes, she's trying to get people to teach research with us. Beyond the professional role in education, Jessica co-founded Educate America Right Now, Incorporated, in 2024. It's a New York-based nonprofit where she serves as the secretary and social media liaison. The organization focuses on supporting adult learners pursuing their first college degree. Currently, she resides in Greenwich, Connecticut with her husband Alex, and enjoys hiking, gardening, and crocheting in her spare time. Please welcome Jessica.
Thanks, Jeanette. So I'm also not a fan of the mic known as North High School, and I am also the reluctant director of the research program. And that's sort of those are the hats that I'm wearing when I'm going to give you my talk today. So having been the chairperson for the last 10 years, one of my responsibilities is to schedule my department. I ask, before I start that process, every year for teachers to give me classes that they would love to teach, and I ask them for them to give me classes that they would hate to teach. And I bet every one of you can probably guess which class most teachers are writing that they hate to teach. Yeah, science research. The reasons that I have gathered, so I'm a scientist, right? I want to know, why do you not want to teach science research? So I ask questions. And the perceptions, which many of us either purposefully or inadvertently actually perpetuate, is that the amount of work is monstrous. That's reasonably true. That you have to be some sort of genius, evidenced by the fact that I'm running the program. That is not true. And you need to have levels of speciality that somehow surpass like what the normal teacher is able to do. In other words, you need to be a magician or a guru or some other type of mystical being. And that makes teaching science research daunting. It makes it daunting to anybody who doesn't sort of already envision that those things are possible for themselves. And I call myself the, I forgot what I just called myself, the hesitant director of science research, because I took on that role because many of you may know Alan Shorn, who was the director of the program at North High School for 27 years, finally said to me, I think I've done enough. And he was right. And I looked around at my department and I said, anybody interested in taking on being the director of science research? And I got like a lot of what is the equivalent of like not it. And so in order to have some sort of continuity, I said, well, if I'm going to expect anybody else to do it, I guess I might as well do it. So let's take a look at what this is like. And it's a tremendous amount. Research is a lot of it. My hope in talking about this is to show you some ways where we can leverage the tool that is AI to make our lives easier and to potentially make the influx of new blood and new teachers into programs more palatable. That's sort of the overview of what's going on. So by the way, with the exception of this picture, which is of me and my husband at the train show at the New York Botanical Gardens last year, every image in this presentation was generated by Canva's AI. As a matter of fact, the image on the front page is what it thought it should look like if I put the title of my presentation in it. So I thought it did a pretty good job with that. So as Jeanette mentioned, I've been teaching for 24 years. 10 of those years I've also been the science department chairperson, and for the last 3 years I have additionally been the director of research. And one of the things that, as I mentioned in my beginning, Jeanette used to ask me, like, I don't understand how you get all of this stuff done. Like, how do you do these things? You must be a guru. So I'm here to, by the way, debunk. No, I sleep. And I also do all these other things, right? So in the beginning, it was like in her spare time. Well, who has spare time? Well, actually, I have spare time. And one of the reasons I have some spare time is because I have found ways to leverage the tools that currently exist to improve my workflow. So let's start. Who can identify with this human? Right? I mean, like, I typed into Canva, give me an image of an overworked science research teacher grading papers that are spilling out, and this is what I got. And with the exception of the fact that I don't actually collect papers anymore and everything is online, I have felt this way many, many times, especially leading right up to about the first week in November. So the benefits of using artificial intelligence, and my focus today is going to be specifically on using ChatGPT. So Maya and Fred gave us like a real buffet, and generally I love a buffet, but when it comes to technology, I'm more of a give me a very short menu of things that I can choose from, because I get easily overwhelmed. So when I was first trying to figure out what aspects of AI I was actually going to utilize so that I could potentially improve my experience, I landed on chat. And I have the paid version, just to preempt that question. It is the best $20, in my opinion, that I spend every month. So, what are some of the focuses that I am going to have for us for today? The first is, how do I decrease my workload? How do I make it so that the time that I do have can be done, can be used doing things that we think, or at least I think, are the most important, which is actually interfacing with students, having conversations with kids, engaging in the conversations that are going to allow us to know whether they used an AI to generate their research ideas, or if they at least understand what it is they're talking about. Again, not an expert. I went to Adelphi University. I did 5 years of genetics research. The last year of genetics research I did was in 2000. That's basically hammering into a stone tablet at this point. Right? I am not an expert in anything that these students are looking at now. I have a degree in biology. I have a comfort level, at least, with living science. I've taught chemistry for 15 years. I have a comfort with chemistry. If you come at me with a math problem, I'm having a panic attack. If you talk to me about coding, I'm like, I can't hear you. My students love math and astrophysics and coding and a whole bunch of other things, computational chemistry, that I know nothing about. So I had to think to myself, how am I going to best serve this young person who wants to look at whether or not you can tell the difference between the progenitor stars of supernova analyzing their fast-moving knot materials. I don't even know where to start helping that kid. Can I make sure their sentences make sense? Yes. So, but talking about how to better support students with targeted feedback about topics, but also about things that every kid's going to need help with. IRB stuff. Am I following all of the ISEF regulations that are 752 pages long? And then finally, and this is really the part that I'm, as a department head, passionate about, leveraging tools of any kind that make teaching this course, which I find extremely beneficial to my learning, exciting, engaging, a lot more fun than sitting in front of a regular classroom, more palatable to a wider range of teachers who might then be able to bring something new and inspirational to the program that I don't have, and the limited number of people who are willing to teach the course at this time, who, by the way, are all excellent, also don't have. And the reality is, as young and vibrant as I look right now, I will eventually retire. And when I leave, I want to make sure that I am leaving a program that is vibrant and filled with individuals who are excited about doing the same work I'm doing now. Every new technology inspires me. Am I going to know how to use this? Am I going to be replaced? Is using this ethical? There's lots of questions that I've heard people, my own self included, talk about. So what I wanted to start with was this AI-generated image of a secretary from the 1950s. You can see how pleased she is to be a secretary in the 1950s, so I don't know what that tells us. And this advertisement that I asked ChatGPT to produce in the tone of a 1950s advertisement for a personal assistant. Right? So whatever your opinions or feelings or beliefs are about how this country grew, it didn't occur because there were gurus. There were people who were very smart, had lots of things that were, inspiring ideas and so on and so forth, but many of the things that actually took place were because those people who were doing the thinking had other people who were able to leverage some of their time to facilitate that process. A personal assistant, a secretary, so on and so forth. So if I think about a manager or someone who's owning a company or an attorney who has an assistant who's taking notes while they speak, I don't think that the attorney is a bad attorney. If that person is turning those notes into a letter or an email that's getting sent out, I don't think that person is a bad corporate manager. They're leveraging tools to help streamline their workflow. So I like to think of ChatGPT as a much potentially happier version of our personal assistant. Using this tool to help make it so that we have the time to do the things that are really important for us, the human beings, to be doing, and offloading some of the tasks that we used to have to do. And one of the most commonly heard concerns that I get when I talk about this is that it somehow feels like we're being devalued as a commodity because we're not doing everything. If that's a belief system, a belief structure that you're living in, this will feel like, I don't even know what it will feel like, terrifying, rule-breaking, morally corrupt, I don't know. I don't base my value as a person on how hard I drive myself into the ground. I base my value as a person on how I can interact with other people, how I can make their experience better, whether I'm a department chair or a research teacher or the tallest person in the grocery store getting the thing down for the person who can't reach on the top shelf. Like that's where my value comes in. I am not more valuable because I don't sleep or because I drink 12 cups of coffee to get through the day. And I think, societally speaking, that we prize this sense of almost martyrdom to some extent when it comes to, particularly in the profession of teaching. And I think it's doing us all a tremendous disservice. It's making a lot of us sick. The number of people who are retiring at the absolute first second that they can retire is skyrocketing because of the immense amount of work that we're expected to be able to produce. And so I'm hoping that some of the things that we learn in terms of research, and maybe you can then sort of spread this out to your other subjects or whatever, can actually make it so that we get to be human again. So that we can actually separate ourselves out from having to be artificially intelligent. So today, what are some of the very specific things that I am going to talk about using ChatGPT for? That's really what I'm here to talk to you about. So here are 6 items that I utilize ChatGPT for in my day-to-day experience. Teaching science research. I teach classes of 10th and 11th graders mixed, and I also teach all of the seniors in my science research program. So we're going to look at how we can use chat, who I refer to. And by the way, I tell my kids that I use ChatGPT. It's not a secret, right? Because keeping that a secret somehow, to me, that's what makes it feel like rude, right? So I'm teaching them when I think, as the adult in the room, it's appropriate to use this tool, how to use this tool, how to be thoughtful about this tool. So I'm always referring to them, and I say, well, you know who helped me with this? And they say, yes, your good and dear friend, ChatGPT, because that's what I usually say when I'm about to introduce someone. So let's take a look at, very briefly, Maya talked about this, I'm going to briefly talk about this too. The prompt is the key. And you could look at 1,000 videos and watch 1,000 presentations about writing prompts for LLMs, large language models. And I have learned a lot. Maya has been an incredible source of wisdom for identifying components. She talked about the ways in which you can write a prompt. Really, you're not going to get good at prompt writing unless you get in there and start writing some prompts and see what it is that you get after you've put that input in. But there are a few key things that you'll see as I go through my presentation that I focus on. I do not write anywhere near as good a prompt as Maya does, but I get pretty good outputs, so I'm happy with that. Who are you is one of the first things. I start every prompt with, you are an expert science research teacher in a high school in the New York metropolitan area. That's like every prompt I write. Or every prompt I'm starting to right now, I'm getting like localized because a lot of the rules and regulations that we're talking about for ICEP or LICEP or whatever are specific to places where you live. Who are you talking to? 10th and 11th grade science research students in high school, 12th grade research students entering the Genron, whatever. What are you attempting to accomplish? Maybe I'm creating an assignment. Maybe I need a rubric. Maybe I'm trying to generate ideas for a student who's just at a loss for what it is they want to study. How do you want the information presented? Do I want a worksheet? Do I want a table? Do I want something else? And is there any other specific information that you want to put in? By the way, you do not need to use good grammar. You don't even need to really spell well, although the little red line does show up. It tells you that you didn't spell it right. But specificity is helpful. Remember that in this case, again, I'm talking about specifically using ChatGPT, but this would work for Claude or any of the other Gemini or whatever else you might be using. Remember to chat. If you don't like the output, tell us what you don't like. Say, oh, I really like this part, but I don't like that part. Could you do this? Could you add, instead of doing it this way, could you do it that way? And you can iterate as you're going through this process. And the truth is, you'll have to try and fail and try again and then fail slightly less badly and then try some more and then be like, no, this is not right, and then go and do something else. And eventually you'll get a product that you'll probably have to modify regardless, but will be helpful. So let's talk about the first thing. We're starting off the year in my Science 10 class and my Research 10 class. And I'm like, all right, folks, we need to figure out what we're going to do this year. What are you studying? What are you interested in? Have you ever asked a high school student what they're interested in? What's the response? I don't know. Oh, you don't think you're not interested in anything? What are you watching about on TikTok? Well, there's this guy, and you know, whatever. But they have no idea where to even start with trying to figure out what they might like to study. And I believe that if you can gather data about it, we're going to study it. So if you want to study fashion, sweet. If you love ants, awesome. If you want to find out what thread count fabric is the best fabric to sleep on, let's figure out how we can gather data about that. But getting to the place where you're generating the idea for the project often becomes challenging, especially for our new students. So the first thing that I want to show you, apparently I had to be, yeah, much too old for that, is an AI prompt idea generator. Now this is an extremely specific one. Okay. Yours doesn't have to be this specific. So here you can see your high school research teacher guiding 10th and 11th grade students in developing project proposals based on their interests. I also give my students a decision tree that helps to sort of narrow down potential areas of focus. But I tell it, your project must adhere to ISAF regulations, ensuring minimal risk if you're interacting with human subjects, right? These are parameters that I don't need to say 759 times while I'm sitting down with the students. I can have the prompt help me with that. I have told chat what is available. If they're doing a project in my classroom, what is available to the students? Right? I don't have a scanning electron microscope. So I want to make sure that the project ideas can fit within the confines of the building in which I am teaching. I have project constraints, particularly, again, this is for my students who are doing work in the room. They're not working with a mentor or some outside facility, but we have time constraints because there's a bunch of other stuff that's going on during class. So what's the time frame they need to be able to do this in? Help them with scheduling. There's a 40-minute period. So I can't take data for an hour. I need to be able to do it within the confines of the class, and so on and so forth. Now, I choose to do this particularly with my 10th graders because I think models are important. So I actually ask it in the prompt that my students use to generate a research question. It may not be the research question that they ultimately wind up using. We probably modify the research question because it's not quite what they're interested in, or it's really a little bit outside what we're going to be able to do in class, or any number of other reasons. A potential materials list. I don't know what it's like to order materials in your schools. If the faster I can get a materials list, the better chance I have the kid actually getting a Petri dish, because the process is unbelievable. Give an estimated time frame. What are some mechanisms I can use to collect data? What data types might I be collecting in this process? Are there ethical considerations that I need to think about while I'm performing this experiment? What ISEF documentation might I need to have for this? What's the working title? You want the kids to come up with the title by themselves? Take that out. You don't want to tell them a research question? Don't include that in your prompt. Right? This is the prompt that I use. This is the prompt that I then have a conversation with each one of my individual students during the course of my periods with them at the beginning of the year to really start to ignite their excitement about an idea. And I will do this because I can use chat at school because I'm a grown-up, or at least I play one on TV. And I'll say, okay, tell me, what do you want to do? What are you interested in? Just give me, don't even think about it, just give me a list of things. And I will type random stuff into this list, and I will generate an initial list of project ideas. I'll email it to the kid. Go ahead and look at these. Pick the best one. Pick the one you're the most interested in. Then we're going to come back and talk about it. We're going to refine this. Why are you interested in this topic? What do you think you might be able to do about this? So again, some people may feel like, oh, my kids need to work harder. They need to do some part of this themselves. That's fine. Don't put it in the prompt. That's really, this is my prompt. Your prompt can look like whatever you want your prompt to look like. So I encourage you, by the way, at the end of my presentation, there's a QR code. You can scan the code. Thank you, Maya. Not only do you have access to my presentation, you have access to every document that I'm going to show you on here. Copy the document into your Google Drive, modify it or don't, and use it. Try it out. Write what you're interested in and see what it comes up with. At least see what it can do in the privacy of your own classroom, or your own office, or your own kitchen table before you decide, I don't think this tool is for me. Give it a shot. Try it out. Remember, this cannot replace you. I can let those kids go home and use that prompt and generate ideas, and they will not conduct that project without me. Not because I'm the stopgap between whether or not they're going to be able to get Petri dish or not. They can go on Amazon and buy everything they need because they don't know what to do with it. They need a human adult to guide them in the process. They need a conversation about what it is. They need help extrapolating nuance. If they bought a Petri dish, they probably wouldn't know what to do with it. They need an adult who is going to be able to interface with them, to be able to make this, to birth whatever it is that's going to happen. But instead of me spending 5 or 6 periods of class walking around and being like, how about you? Do you have any ideas yet? Okay, let's talk about that. Well, give me a second. I got to come back over here and I'm going to talk to, because I'm running 16 independent studies. I'm outsourcing that time so that I can have a real conversation with my kids about real science stuff or math stuff or astrophysics or whatever it is they want to talk about. Again, not a group. And I don't place the value on my being a guru. I'm not. I actually think my value is in the fact that I'm a regular person. And I can show my kids that regular people can do unbelievably cool things if they've learned how to leverage tools. So, for example, I have a lot of students who are looking at code. I have a lot of students who are interested in these new molecular modeling processes with all these algorithms. I don't know what's going on in my school, but astrophysics is the thing everybody wants to study. I am not a physicist. Math gives me hives. My husband is an electrical engineer, so it's a weird combination. But I can't give a student who's writing an introduction about astrophysics the same level of detailed feedback and sort of intuitive understanding that I can for a student who's doing a project in biology. I simply cannot do it. I will never be able to do it. It doesn't matter how much time I spend. It doesn't matter if I never sleep again. I cannot do it. I leverage a tool so that I can provide the same level of detailed feedback about something that was just learned 3.5 months ago to a student who's really interested in it, as I can to a student who's doing a genetics project. I utilize a tool. So let me show you my introduction prompt. I use this. The kids don't use this. I use this prompt. Again, available for your use or not. Add to it, remove from it, pretend it doesn't exist. This is the prompt that I use when I am evaluating a student's introduction, first shot through. First of all, I read it. I make suggestions for changing the order of things. I tell them they're not following the formatting that I'm expecting for their introduction. I remind them to use 1-inch margins. I circle this and say, this is not a sentence. This is also not a sentence. You need to work on sentences. My kids are not using ChatGPT to write their first paper. But if they are, they're saying, please write an introduction like a first grader. Like, I don't know what's happening. They're not using it for that anyway. You need citations here. There's like 7 sentences of fact. You haven't cited the thing. I go through that whole process. I also copy and paste their introduction here. And then I copy and paste this entire thing into ChatGPT. And in way less time, even on a project that I would know a considerable amount about, I can get some pretty incredible feedback. Now again, I have to read that feedback. I have to make sure that feedback makes sense. I have to make sure that it makes sense in the context of the introduction that my student is writing. But let's take a look at what that actually looks like. So, bear with me a second as I click 1,000 times. You have your own folder, Subhash. So here's a disidentified, de-identified, de-identified introduction. The student is looking at physics, astrophysics. Again, I have no idea what he's doing. I take that. I paste the student's introduction in. Or I just individually. How long would this take you to do? Infinity time. My husband will tell you also that there's apparently more than one kind of infinity, just in case anybody out there wanted that craziness on their back. I cannot do that. And I'm okay with the fact that I can't. What I'm not okay with is not providing feedback to this student that's going to improve their introduction in the same way that I could improve a biology paper. Now, some of us might feel a little nervous. Oh, that's too much control lost. So read this, write down the key points, and bring it to a discussion with your kid. Then they're going to learn because they're going to have to talk to you about this, or you're going to learn because you're going to have to talk to them about this. And then this creates a really robust conversation about this particular student's topic. Maybe you have to do, maybe this helps me figure out, all right, there seems to be a key thing here. Maybe I need to do a little bit of reading up on this, so that way I can engage the student in a more nuanced conversation about what it is we're doing. But this took hours of my time and condensed it into seconds of my time. And now I have time to do what I think is the real meaningful work of science research. Building experiences for kids, interfacing with kids, having community with kids, talking eyeball to eyeball with kids, because I did not have to spend, and then also not for nothing, but having dinner, right? Maybe, catching up on a Netflix show, because that's also part of being a real human, having a real experience in the classroom, is that I can actually be a human when I show up to work in the morning because I didn't get 2.5 hours of sleep. And I remember when I was a brand new teacher. I would come home from work, face plant, sleep for an hour, get up, work to death, face plant again, wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, we know that cycle. Did that make me a better teacher? I don't think it did. And it certainly didn't make me a teacher who was available to provide kindness and compassion and empathy, because I was exhausted and grumpy and all those things. So this is what I'm thinking about when I'm utilizing these tools. I now have a much greater opportunity to interact with my students. So again, love the introduction prompt, it's there, take it. Want to add more to it? Knock yourself out. Don't love it? Don't use it. All of that is fine. But that is one of the ways that I'm able to leverage this tool to improve my student's experience, because I can't provide him that level of feedback. How many people like writing lyrics? Oh, weird. Because I would have thought this is what you want to spend all of your time doing. How many of you enjoy creating assignments? I mean, I kind of do. I actually like the creative process of coming up with an assignment. But like the hammering out what the worksheet should look like, and like, wow, I don't love that part. So again, every year I'm trying to make, so one of the things that I hear about cheating, right? Well, if you use the same assignment every single year, and you think that the kids from the year that you're in right now aren't using the assignment from the kids from last year, somebody is definitely doing that. If you're doing a data analysis project, they already have the data. If you happen to be a quiz test person, you could give 50 versions of an exam in 5 minutes by utilizing a tool that does the drudgery work so that you don't actually have to do the drudgery work. So let's just look at one. My superintendent, huge on media literacy. What do I know about media literacy? It's probably too close. So I was like, okay, let me ask my good and dear friend ChatGPT to create, and I realized I didn't include the prompt for this, so I can go back and get the prompt that I used for this, but I basically said, you're teaching media literacy in a research class for 10th and 11th grade students. Create a worksheet that you can put alongside a journal article, which I then chose, and then have it be a paired activity, because I wanted it to be a paired activity, where they have to do critical analysis of media. Typed that in. This is the worksheet that was created. The headings, the lines, the spot for the name, all that stuff. In seconds, this was produced. Now I asked my good and dear friend, Jeanette Coletti, to give me an example of an assignment that she wanted to create. She said, what about a presentation? Do you remember sending this email to me? What about a presentation about doing a presentation on ISAF Form 1A, the research plan? We focus on letters A, B, and D, something like that to start, right? Okay, so let's do it. Let's open up our friend ISAF. Notice it is not my good and dear friend ISAF. These forums make me very nervous. But let's go and open up our student research plan. Right, here's the stuff. This is the information. I don't need to make that up. That exists already. That I want students to do. And this is not going to be an amazing prompt because I'm writing it right now in front of you. Right, but we're going to do this. Please create an outline for students in a science research class. Grades 10 and 11, where the students are required to create a presentation about ISAF Form 1A, focus specifically on parts A, B, and D. Right, well, based on the topic. But look, like how, this is not a refined prompt, right? The idea is for us to just take a look and see, here we go. Copy, front chat, paste, go. Now, you get this. Copy and paste it into a Google Doc. You say, I don't like this. I want this to start with this. But just like I remember when I was in high school and I was writing a paper for English, the hardest place for me was starting the first sentence, or getting a framework, or putting the outline together. So maybe this isn't exactly what you want. It probably wouldn't be for me, because that was a really cruddy prompt. But I could talk back to it and say, well, thanks, I really appreciate that, but I need this, or I need that. But here is an outline of sections that students would need to investigate, right, with a really bad prompt, okay? So you can utilize this tool. The other thing that you can say, let's say this was the best outcome we got, we were pleased with this, please also create a rubric to grade this assignment. The rubric should be from 0 to 4 for all categories. Please outline how to achieve each put in table. This is not how I write prompts. The idea, obviously, is for you to see, even with the worst of prompts, so with every one of you that raised your hand at the beginning of this whole discussion about who likes to create a rubric, I'm sorry to tell you that chat can now create a rubric for you so you don't have to do it yourself. So, but if you want to do it yourself, you're welcome to do it yourself. And you can modify this. Again, it's a chat bot, so this LLM will allow you to talk back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But now you have a thing that in addition to the assignment, you can hand to the students and say, if you want 100, how am I going to get an A? Well, if you want to get an A, here are the things you have to do. Do all of these things in this rubric, right? Can you write a rubric? Yes. How long would that rubric have taken you to write? What else could you have been doing that ChatGPT cannot do with the time that you just saved writing that rubric? Now, again, crappy prompt, crappy rubric, crappy worksheet. Prompt writing takes time. So the initial investment actually might feel like you're spending a little bit more time working. But with skill and time and a little bit of input, every lesson you could create could have a different, slightly modified outcome. Right? Or if I was making an exam or I was making some sort of activity that I didn't want students to be able to look at their neighbors and copy, ChatGPT can use. How many of you love the mentor switch? I have a lot of participants. Either everybody is sleeping after lunch, or nobody likes the mentor search, right? Some of us have mentors that we work with every year, and we're like, oh, we gotta pick the kid that we want to keep this mentor, so I gotta make sure that I'm careful, I pick the right kids. It's wild, and I feel like the mentor search for Regeneron starts in 8th grade now. I don't even know what's going on anymore, but the mentor search is a lot of work. And again, just like the idea generator, getting started is really hard. So I have used this personal assistant to help both me and my students in the process of searching for a mentor. It doesn't take away the human element. I still talk to my kids about how do you interact with a mentor on Zoom for the first time, and we talk about how you engage in professional discussions and all of these things. But I didn't have to spend a tremendous amount of time crafting a mentor letter. Now, I require that my students give out basically a form letter. That's my requirement. And I give them spots where they have to fill things in. We talk about do not send out the letter with a bracket that says your name. Don't let that happen. They also have to send it to me first, and I read through it, and so on and so forth. We also talk about the fact that they should be reading papers that their prospective mentors have written so that you can have some sort of knowledge about what's going on. And I tell them, don't tell them that you read the paper on, I don't know, mole rats and their use of technology if you have not in fact read the paper on mole rats and technology, because I've watched a student be on a Zoom where a mentor has said, so talk to me about my paper on mole rats and technology, and the kids are like, So this is the place where I get to have the conversations with the kids, and then they see an example of what an appropriate professional email looks like. There's a subject, people. It should be professional. It should articulate the purpose. We talk about how to sign things. I also want to make sure that this happens to be my juniors applying for research for senior year, that the mentor is aware that there's work they have to do in addition to taking on my student over the summer. And if they have questions about what that work is, they should either reach out to me or they can do some research on their own. So this is a form letter that each one of my research students who's a junior who's looking for a mentor, if they don't already have one, might use. I have one for sophomores, which is slightly different. What are you going to study with your mentor? I don't know. All right, good. Walk through this decision tree. Answer the questions. See what you come up with. When you get some possible choices, I wrote you a prompt. Put your choices into this area of interest. Insert this prompt into ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever it is that you're using. If you're not allowed to use it, tell me. I will do it for you. So who's interested in something? What are we interested in? You want to do the decision tree?
RSA encryption.
RSA encryption. Nope. Thank God for spelling. Check things. Anything else? You have any subcategories you want to answer that?
Ethical hacking.
Hacking? Ethical hacking. That sounds so fun. And also sort of counterintuitive. Anything else?
Coding.
Coding? Okay, great. I actually don't know the word prompt. Put it into your friend. Tell us what you got. How long did that take? Would you have gone onto Google and done this? The kids have gone onto Google and done this? Yeah. Is it my opinion that that work is somehow better if they did it over 15 hours of drudgery and trying to find the place? I don't think it is. I don't think my student is a better student for having used this tool, or a worse student for having used this tool to get to the places that are actually going to potentially provide them with an adult who wants to work with them in a particular area of study. Because that kid's going to go to a lab. That kid's going to have to learn to use the technology. That kid's going to have to interface with postdocs. That kid's going to have to write a paper. They're going to have to understand what they're doing. That's the hard part. That's, to me, that's where the learning is. That's the place where I can move some of this overwhelm out of the way. I'm also not trying to figure out where the hell am I going to send this kid who wants to do these things I've never heard of in my life. Right? That's hacking. I don't know what it is. Right, so here we go. Here it is. It also decided that it was going to tell me some things that I should do to get ready for this process. So that was nice. Thank you so much. I did it to your friend chat. You like that prompt? Use it. If you don't like that prompt, don't use it. If you want to have your kids go through the process of looking online or whatever way you do it, do that. Or maybe try something new. Maybe try a way that allows them to still have an experience without spending a tremendous amount of time. And then you can teach about writing letters. You can teach about ethical and appropriate email etiquette. You can talk about making sure that you don't release personal information about yourself. You can discuss why it's important to CC your science research teacher on every email you send, and how adults out in the world are usually nervous about talking to young people who are under the age of 18. You can have those conversations. That's part of what my job, I believe, still is. How many people like making sure that they are complying with ISEF rules and IRB requirements?
That's fun.
That's the funnest thing. Do you like that? All right, so John likes that. How about anyone else? Not even Heather. Yeah, in my spare time. And I am constantly nervous that I'm going to miss something because I'm working with, I teach 2 classes of research in addition to being the director and being the department chairperson. I have a limited amount of time. I am going to miss something. I'm going to make a mistake. I'm not going to remember. It's part of being a human being. This is a place where a large language model can also be helpful. So utilize, I don't know if I have this in my folder. Jeanette's, watching me talk faster, so all of these things are in here. Do you have a question? No? No pressure. There's pressure. I feel it. So let's take a look. I have a research plan. The kid write up a research plan. This is the kid's research plan from this year. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it into my good friend chat. Beginning here, and I'm just going to write, please review this research plan for compliance with PSEF regulations, IRB requirements, and outline the forms from ISEF that are required. Apparently I like to scroll. My kids call me a serial scroller. They're like, do you know that you can just... Oh, I scroll. So, review of research plan for ISEF compliance and IRB requirements. Project involves human participants, therefore it has to follow rules for human participants. It is minimal risk. Parental consent and participant consent are required in order for the students to participate in this project. There's some ideas about data privacy and confidentiality that students should be focused on, survey questions, talks a little bit about risk assessment, and then it has the IRB requirements in order to be able to submit to the IRB, and it outlines the forms. Now, I know we have the forms wizard, right? We have that. We can fill that out. That's fine too. But all this stuff is in one place. Survey design, talking about a recruitment process. There's some ethical considerations. There's a statistics plan in place. You don't want them to have all that? Don't give it to them. You want to cut that down a little bit so that they have to do more? Cool, do that. Right? But here is a way to streamline that task. And then you say, now bring me your forms. Let's go through the forms together. Let's talk about who fills out what thing. How are we going to fill this out? What of these forms am I supposed to have? Who am I supposed to give this form to? Right? Being able to push a lot of papers around and remember 750 rules, to me, doesn't make you a better person. It might make you at least it makes me a more anxious person. So again, this is about leveraging tools so that the amount of time I'm spending can be spent really well with my kids. Because that's what I'm here for. Like, I want to talk to the kids. I want to be engaged with the kids. I want to do stuff with the kids. So those are the 6 major things that I use ChatGPT for when I am navigating research. I use it for a lot of other things too, like a quick email that I'm supposed to write. I'll write it as my pointed out, put it in and say, like, please check this for tone. Especially if I happen to be aggravated when I'm writing an email, that's always helpful. If you have any questions or if you want access to more things that I might have, you're welcome to email me. This QR code brings you to this presentation. This presentation has every link available to you in a folder. I also created a collaborative AI research folder, so if you happen to feel like you're all of a sudden excited or you're doing this already and you want to share your prompts with the rest of us who are out there prompting away, please feel free to put your prompt information in there. And I really appreciate the fact that you are as committed to our kids as you are, because if you're a research teacher, you really committed to kids. It's a lot of work. And then, as I mentioned before, please note every single picture in this presentation, with the exception of me and my husband, who are in fact real people, was generated by AI. Our timekeeper over here is. There's no questions, and the best presentation. This is not a single question.
Does the students know that you're using the ChatGPT?
Absolutely.
So why don't you let them use it?
Well, first of all, they can't in school.
They can use it at home.
They can if they have parental permission, and I don't assume parental permission. They have to be over the age of 18 to be able to use chat on their own. So I don't think it's ethical of me to require that my students use ChatGPT. I'll use it. They know they can use it. I provide them with.
So they know that you're using it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All the time, I'm walking around, I'm like, and I spoke to my good and dear friend ChatGPT today because I really wanted to come up with a new way for us to do media literacy. And here is the project. Now let's get out the article and start reading it together. Let's start parsing it out. How can we answer this question? I tell them. It's not a secret. I'm not ashamed that I'm using a tool that's helping me.
When you started this thing, you said that you asked them what is their interest, what they want to do, and all those things. Do you share with the students that what are the options out there? Like if you chat GPT and they say, give me some projects, hit robots. It can give you that information and you can share it back to the students. Sure. These are availability.
Yep. Well, I actually have them do a decision tree, which helps them to focus in on major areas of study. And then once they do that, then we use the major areas of study that they've come up with as places of interest to start to delve further and further and further. A lot about what Maya was talking about when she was doing her dissertation, right? Like, continuous interfacing brings us to a specific that the student really feels excited about.
How many students do you go through every year?
Do I personally go through? I have 19 in a class of 10 and 11 mixed, and I have 16 seniors.
So you go through this whole process with all of them?
Yep.
Are any of them groups?
Well, none of my seniors are groups, no. I have 2 groups in my class of 19. We have 124 kids in the program, but I have a reduced schedule because I'm also the one. So we have 4 10, 11 classes, 2 9th grade classes, specifically teaching skills and working on psychology projects, and then I have all the seniors in the class. Mhm. I'm a research teacher. You want to study fashion? Bring it on.
By the way, I used to work at FIT.
Yeah, one of my seniors this year submitted a political science project. If you want to research it, bring it on. Were you listening to sitting in the front row? He wasn't listening. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm not sitting around with some huge abundance of time. I don't want anybody to think I'm sitting at my desk twiddling my thumbs. I'm not. But I have to leverage my time well. If I want to be a halfway decent department chair, and I want to be a halfway decent science research director, and I want to be a really good science research teacher, I have to figure out where I can find help, how I can support my process. This has been game-changing in the amount of time that I can spend with kids. Game-changing. And the amount of energy I have when I'm spending time with kids.
So when you're doing, let's say you get the paper, you just copy and paste the paper into this and say, give feedback according to this rubric that I have, and then you kind of go through that and then parse it out in a conversation with the students, give them the feedback.
So what I do is I use Google Classroom. So all of my kids have to turn their stuff in using Google Docs. My comment, a lot of times this is not a sentence, spelling error, you know, whatever. I'll talk about form, I'll go through the whole thing, I'm reading the introduction. I will also copy their introduction like you saw me do, and put it into that prompt, put it in ChatGPT, and then I will look at the output, and I copy and paste that into the bottom of their introduction draft.
Really copy and paste whoever's
And then I
useful,
delete,
right.
this is not useful, this is inappropriate for a 10th grader, blah, blah,
So
blah, and
you
then
give
I'll
your
add stuff.
feedback, and then you give, and this is what ChatGPT
Correct.
says.
Yep.
Tell them that this is the ChatGPT feedback.
I do. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert in astrophysics, I'm not.
Right.
Could they do it have you
They can. They could. But again, kids can't use ChatGPT in school. I can't assume that they have parental consent to use it. I am not an idiot. I know they're using it, but I am not going to force a kid to use ChatGPT because they require parental consent. And I'm driving the conversation, right? So now I gave you back your introduction, but Jeanette, we're going to sit down today and we're going to talk about your introduction. Here were some really good pieces. I really appreciate how your overview was really tight. You're doing a good job with the funnel effect. You're really bringing people towards the thing, but you're missing a few things. And apparently also, because I don't know anything about computer science, here's some stuff we should investigate. Let's take some time to do that together. Right? I get to learn, the kid gets to learn, and they get feedback that really targets what it is that they're learning.
I have an observation. I was looking at the pictures that you had up there that were computer generated.
Yep.
And I noticed that the hands that were in the picture.
It's a good way to tell if something's generated by
too many fingers.
Yep. Or like the pencil is sticking out of the top of their hand. So I'm better than most people at the stand-sit game, but I'm not perfect. When I go to landscape, I'm not that great. You know, ChatGPT's Dolly has actually gotten pretty good with hands, but the hands are a dead giveaway. 12 fingers is a lot. I don't know what the problem is with the fingers, but it really struggles a lot.
Do you ever put anything in twice and get completely done?
Completely different? No. Yeah. Sometimes I will put something in twice because I won't love the feedback I get the first time. Or I'll chat and I'll be like, I need more specifics about this. But I've never put something in and gotten something totally different. And again, I have to be careful, right? Because this is an LLM and it can hallucinate and all that stuff. So when I read the feedback that ChatGPT is giving, I'm using my decoder skills to try to find places that maybe there's problems with. And if I'm not sure, I look it up, right? Because I also don't want to give my kids feedback that's wrong. So if it really starts diving into the weeds about stuff, I might actually go to Google then and try to figure out, is this right or is this not, or like, is this credible? But I've never gotten two completely different things. And I will say there is a difference in the detail and specificity between the regular model and the paper model, which is why I use the paper model.
Do you, when you got like one project up, you got 19, right? Do you keep going back to the same chat that's formed when you did the initial conversations, or it stays in one place, or do you? I kind of noticed you had a million different things on.
A million. Yeah, that's what my brain looks like. If anybody wants to know, it's just a whole bunch of tabs that we can't read all of them at the same time. I use a different chat for every student's introduction, for example. So I will start a new chat. Because one of the things, and this used to be really rampant with the older versions of ChatGPT, and I don't know if this is true with the unpaid version, but sometimes it starts to like feed back on itself in a way that the output starts to get a little wonky. I find that if I create a new chat for every input that I'm putting in, even if I'm asking it to do the same thing with a different introduction, that is what gives me the finest grained, most.
But what if you're doing the same project's introduction and now they're sort of, would you use that same introduction, or you would use now a different?
Yeah, I would use a different prompt. I have a different prompt for methodology. I have a different prompt for results and discussion. I have a different prompt for the whole paper. And then I put in a separate input for every time I'm using it. And I have found that gives me the best possible output without the chances of it like walking down a weird road. It's like any algorithm. If you're listening to, I don't know, you type your favorite song into Spotify and then you let it play. After a while, you're like a far way away from the genre of that song. Chat can do that sometimes. It does it far less than it used to if you are using that conversation to like do a different task. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused here.
Excellent.
With your presentation and with Maya's presentation, I don't see anything in there which should forbid students use the ChatGPT, considering they're using the TikTok. Those are far seats than the tops.
Because I don't make laws in New York State.
So what is in there which can be misused by allowing students to use it?
That's not the issue. The issue is that as an educator, I have to comply with ed law.
No, I understand that New York State.
So,
my question is this thing, and again, the same question. I don't see anything in there other than, I was like when I tell my students to go to the ChatGPT for math classes, and they're done. Because that's much more information than I ever thought I can give them. So what you just said and what everybody has to do, I don't see anything sharing this thing with the students. I'm confused.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the law and all this thing. I'm just having a general discussion point.
It's
Within a few seconds, you basically came up with all that thing.
I think I get, yeah. It's not the, it's the answers.
Require them to use ChatGPT as an educator. I cannot require them. I can point them to it. I can say, I think this is a great tool. I can talk to them about ethical concerns with respect to using, which is very important, by the way. When is it? I have conversations with my kids that are on that continuum that Maya talked about, and I'm probably not in the same place, either closer to the top or the bottom as anybody else in here, right? We're all on this continuum. I teach them about what I think is ethical uses of AI and any technology, any tool that they're going to be using. But I can't tell them they have to use it. Because as a department head of science,
Students are not allowed to use it. They're not allowed to use these things. Students are not allowed to use
In school, they can.
In school.
Right. And I can't require a student to use something
I
that they're,
understand that.
because their parent could say they're not allowed. So I say, if you want to do this, I'll do it with you. I'll use my ChatGPT. So I'm not telling students not to use it, but I cannot tell them they must.
And the issue is when did, we're asking, use it to help generate ideas, but
Don't
don't
use it
tell
to
them to
write
write
your
a
introduction.
research paper. That they have to do themselves. They can't say, hey, now write my research.
Well, they could.
They
They actually
could.
could do that. I actually used ChatGPT the other day to generate an introduction as an example, and I almost had a stroke with how good the example was. Right? But I'm not telling my kids not to use it. I'm telling my kids how to use it, and I'm saying if you're not allowed to use it, I'll use it with you. But I'm not telling them they can't use it.
I think I mentioned earlier that I'm part of this big tank working with the big tank. I worked with India, I worked with Germany, I worked with Italy. They all have a ChatGPT available for schools. So
What age?
basically high school schools.
Well, the only thing that I can say is the same thing I would say to recruiters, like, how come I can't research murder? You can. People do. But you're a high school student. And what you're allowed to research and what an adult is allowed to research are not the same thing. There are reasons that we have safeguards in this.
I was just gonna say that I feel like it's hard from the outside, but I think schools tend to be reactionary, and their first response will be, shut it down. We don't know what this is, shut it down.
Yep.
And now schools are starting to realize the power of it and are starting to pilot Gemini and Copilot and some of these other ones that feel a little bit safer to control, but I think they're starting to realize that we need to embrace this is the future. But the first reaction is we don't know what to do with this, we're just gonna prevent it.
Right, and most of these large language models are not going to sign a data privacy agreement because they are making their products better using your data. So until that shifts, or until there's a school version, we're never going to use ChatGPT in New York State, or until they change the law. Because we have a law that says that we can't sell our kids' data.
As long as you don't put your age, sex, date of birth.
It comes with the email.
So basically, what is this?